Chapter 26:16. When the density of matter reaches or approaches that of a neutron star, the form of matter is meaningless, Chun Zhao said. There's no fundamental difference between a ball and a knife. At the same weight, a ball the size of a ping-pong ball is more lethal than a 40-meter knife. Boss, I'm talking in camera language, not real physics. The effect of a 40-meter knife is much better than a ping-pong ball. No, the setting of X needs to be considered from the perspective of physics. Fine. Zhang Ting didn't understand why Chun Zhao had to focus on physics. To her, the characteristic of X itself wasn't scientific. But Chun Zhao had to make an unscientific character conform to the characteristics of physics. Wasn't that putting the cart before the horse? But he was the boss. Also, book a suite in a Magic City hotel on the 15th day of the year. It'll be the venue for our company's gathering. I'll pay for it. Zhang Ting wasn't surprised by Chun Zhao's request at all. Chun Zhao had always been so generous. If he didn't make this request, Zhang Ting would find it strange. Also, book 2 plane tickets or train tickets to Dragon Tiger Mountain in Jiangxi. Boss, you're going to burn incense. No, I'm old friends with the Celestial Master sect leader. We're having a gathering. Fine, that's all you rich people want now. Zhang Ting clearly misunderstood Chun Zhao. After hanging up the phone, Zhang Ting told the good news that the boss was going to give them a bonus. Seeing that it was still early, Chun Zhao flew into the sky again. Chun Zhao was curious. What was his limit? In hell, he'd flown 300,000 meters in the sky. But that was in hell. Hell was countless times bigger than the human world. The thickness of the atmosphere was also much thicker. Gravity could no longer restrict Chun Zhao. Now, Chun Zhao could resist the strong radiation of the universe. He could even absorb it and turn it into his own magic. This was no longer a limiting factor for Chun Zhao. What restricted him was the thinness of the air. Even Chun Zhao needed to breathe now. Of course, it wasn't difficult for Chun Zhao to temporarily change to internal breathing. Even ordinary people might be able to do it. For example, some people could dive for 20 to 30 minutes without any equipment. This was a typical internal breathing technique. Chun Zhao could absorb the oxygen in the water. But in the absolute vacuum of the universe, he couldn't do it. Chun Zhao could already fly up to 80,000 meters in the air. Generally, the altitude of a commercial plane was only 8 to 12,000 meters. 20,000 meters above them would be the ozone layer. Chun Zhao's current limit was the middle layer. Above them was the dissipation layer, where there was almost no air. Even Chun Zhao's small world couldn't gather enough air. The air density here was a billionth of that at sea level. In other words, 100 billion cubic meters of air here was equivalent to 1 cubic meter of air at sea level. Here, Chun Zhao couldn't use neutron star, white dwarf, and other skills. This was because Chun Zhao's neutron stars and white dwarfs were mainly made by condensing air. However, Chun Zhao could not even absorb air here, let alone create high-density neutron stars and white dwarfs. But in this environment that was close to a vacuum, there was no air resistance. Chun Zhao's speed also increased greatly. This was the harshest environment on Earth. Even the 2 poles were far from this place. Every time he reached an extreme environment and stayed there for a long time, Chun Zhao's body would adapt. His body's functions would start to coordinate, allowing him to adapt to the environment. Chun Zhao doubted if he could really adapt to a vacuum environment one day. Of course, it could also be an evolution of his body's functions. It could also be that his cultivation had reached the point where he could fly. Chun Zhao looked like he could fly now, but he was still far from reaching the legendary 9 heavens, plucking the moon and the 9 hells. Most of Chun Zhao's powers were unnatural, but many of them were related to science. Chun Zhao moved. In a few seconds, he returned to Mirror Lake. He followed the tunnel at the bottom of Mirror Lake and entered thousands of meters underground. After a few months, a large number of underground creatures had appeared here again. Last time, Chun Zhao had already killed a batch. Moreover, the flesh of these creatures was all used as ingredients for Marina's restaurant. The growth rate of these underground creatures was very fast, and some of them were large enough to threaten the safety of humans. Most of them should have gathered here from the tunnel that extended in all directions. The reason was that there was water here, so the creatures would gather here. If there was water, there would be food. Even humans had this instinct, let alone animals. The creatures that gathered here from other places were clearly different from the aquatic creatures here. The creatures from other places were clearly much larger. On the other hand, the aquatic creatures here were obviously much smaller. Back then, Chun Zhao had killed many of the creatures in this lake, but he'd still left some small ones. But in a few months, they'd grown considerably. Chun Zhao had considered using this place as a breeding farm. So, this time, he was especially merciful. Even if some creatures attacked him first, he would choose to dodge most of the time instead of killing them with a slap. After all, every single creature here was extremely valuable as a source of food. Of course, Chun Zhao wouldn't use their meat as ingredients for his restaurant without trying them first. Chun Zhao had tried every creature here first. He had also tested them to ensure that their meat was safe. Chun Zhao made some records, such as the forms and habits of every creature here. Not every creature here was aggressive. Some of them ate the minerals that had softened in the lake water. These creatures were Chun Zhao's favorite because they weren't aggressive and had a simple source of food. Chun Zhao wondered if he should open up a larger space underground for a breeding farm. After circling around, he brought a few creatures back to the surface. However, most of them died as soon as they returned. Only a mollusk that looked like a snail was still alive. Chapter 26:17. Chun Zhao looked at the mollusks that he'd named stone snails. They were omnivores. Chun Zhao had observed them before. An adult stone snail could weigh up to 700 kilograms, but half of its weight was in its stone shell. The stone shell of a stone snail was very hard. Apart from its own shell, it would also use mud and sharp rocks to stick on its shell. As long as other predators attacked it, it would immediately retreat into its shell. Its main food was water plants and some minerals. Chun Zhao really liked stone snail meat. Marina's restaurant sales were also very good. A plate of 150 grams of stone snail meat cost $150 at Marina's restaurant. At least 200 servings of stone snail meat were sold every day. After deducting the costs, Chun Zhao's profit from the stone snail meat alone reached $25,000 a day. Therefore, if it was just Marina restaurant alone, the supply of stone snails would exceed the demand. Marina's restaurant would at most use 30 kilograms a day. It wasn't even 1/10 of an adult stone snail. Moreover, stone snails weren't cheap. Chun Zhao was thinking about raising stone snails on a large scale. At least, that was if he could raise them. Stone snails could adapt to the environment on the ground. Now, it depended on its growth cycle and food intake. In the morning, after Feilai went to work, Chun Zhao called Azak. Azak, come to my house. You don't know? Okay, I'll give you the address. A while later, Azak arrived at Chun Zhao's house. Like most people, he was shocked when he saw Chun Zhao's Mirror Lake Manor. Even Itak was shocked. Chun Zhao's wealth was greater than he'd imagined. Boss! Azak entered the manor and saw Chun Zhao lying on a chair in the yard. Okay, come with me. Chun Zhao glanced at Azak and walked into the woods. Azak didn't know what Chun Zhao was going to do, but he still followed obediently. Just then, a giant snail appeared in front of Isaac. Boss, what's this? Azak was a bit scared. This snail was really too big. Its shell was already around 2 meters long. Don't worry, it's not aggressive. I called you here because I want you to study some of its data, raise it, breed it, and its needs for food. Right now, I only know that it mainly eats aquatic plants. Okay, boss, what's the use of this thing? Its meat provides my restaurant with nearly $10 million in profit every year. What do you think it's good for? Isaac almost slapped himself. He actually questioned the task his boss had given him. Also, how's the formation of your Marine Biology Research Institute team? Currently, the initial formation has been completed, but there are no projects worth researching yet. Have you heard of the mysterious island? I know. As a marine biology professional, how could Isaac not know about the mysterious island? That would cause a sensation in the biological world, especially in marine biology. Several famous international teams tried to contact the owner of the mysterious island and the person in charge. They hoped to conduct research on the mystical island, but they were all rejected. Your team is going to Mysterious Island to study the giant sea creatures there, Chun Zhao said. Boss, you've already contacted the person in charge of the mystical island? The mystical island is mine. Why? Isaac stared at Chun Zhao in shock. The mystical island belonged to his boss? He'd heard that the mystical island's commercial value was over $100 billion. The creatures on the mystical island had already shocked the scientific world. There were even huge repercussions in society. There were all kinds of news about the mystical island almost every day. Even Hollywood was planning to get in on the action. Some film companies even planned to make movies about the mystical island. The outside world had also been guessing who the mysterious owner of the mystical island was. He didn't expect Chun Zhao to be the owner of the mystical island. He recalled that before the mystical island had appeared, Chun Zhao had already recruited him and formed a marine biology research team. This meant that Chun Zhao already knew of the mystical island's existence. He could even calculate the mystical island's rise. This made Isaac respect Chun Zhao even more. What kind of team could calculate the rise and fall of an island? Unless it was the world's top mathematical team and had the help of a supercomputer. Otherwise, Oaken wouldn't be able to calculate when an island would rise from the sea. Boss, I'll do my best to complete the mission you gave me. I won't disappoint you. That's for the best. Chun Zhao nodded. Chun Zhao didn't care if Isaac was ambitious or not. Everyone had the right to aspire to a better life. Just then, Chun Zhao received a call. It was from Zola. Chun, I'm planning to release a new spring collection. Do you need it? Now, if you're free. Then I'll go over now. Isaac glanced at Chun Zhao. After Chun Zhao hung up, he said, Boss, if you're busy, I'll leave first. Okay. Oh, I'll have someone send this snail over. After sending Isaac off, Chun Zhao went to the Baroness headquarters. It was just like his first time here. It was still so busy. Designers, assistants, and models were all moving around the venue. A tall model walked hurriedly and bumped into Chun Zhao. Are you blind? Sorry. Chun Zhao smiled and took 2 steps back. Shut up, bitch. Nat jogged over. When he looked at Chun Zhao, he had a big smile on his face. Chun, you're here. Come with me. Nat pulled Chun Zhao's wrist and walked to his dressing room. Smiling, Chun Zhao broke free from Nat's hand without batting an eyelid. Nat had always said that he was straight. However, Chun Zhao found it hard to believe someone who was used to pointing at him. As if he didn't feel it, Nat pulled Chun Zhao into the dressing room. All of you get out, Nat said. Ava, you stay. Ava was wearing glasses, but it wasn't hard to tell that she was a beauty. To be honest, the Baroness employees, whether it was normal runners, assistants, or designers, were almost all handsome men and beautiful women, not to mention the models here. Even if it was Sissy Night, he was still a handsome guy. Nat's clothes were more feminine. He was indeed a handsome guy, and he was the kind of handsome guy who had quite an imposing aura. He wasn't any worse than Hollywood stars. 9 Heavens God King. Chapter 26:18. Chun, take off your shirt and pants. Nat had taken advantage of Chun Zhao many times. Every season, Chun Zhao would come over to get his body measured. Then, Nat would drag him in. Actually, it was fine as long as he was familiar with it. Chun Zhao hoped that Triss would help him measure his body. However, Triss would measure Phalai every time. Chun Zhao did not want Nat to touch her. When Chun Zhao took off his clothes, Nat and Ava's eyes widened. Chun, your body is perfect, Nat said, swallowing. Ava wiped away the saliva at the corner of her mouth and gently touched Chun Zhao's chest. Chun Zhao's skin was slightly yellow. His 2 chest muscles were like exquisite brass, shining with a metallic luster. The intoxicating feeling made Ava a bit dazed. Smiling, Chun Zhao pushed Ava's hand away. Only then did Ava reluctantly move her hand away. Ava glanced at Nat. Nat had walked behind the curtain to take out his tools. How much do you charge? Ava asked in a low voice. Chun Zhao was stunned. Did she think of him as a model? He heard that many models had special part-time jobs. Did he look like a part-time model? How much do you think I'm worth? Ava gritted her teeth and looked Chun Zhao up and down. $2,000. Chen Zhao chuckled. He did not expect Ava to pay $2,000. After all, an assistant salary was not high, even if an assistant designer's salary was higher than that of assistants in other industries. But $2,000 was not a small amount for most people. She was actually willing to spend $2,000 on him. Or was he worth $2,000? Just then, Nat walked out. Ava immediately shut her mouth. Nat glared at Ava, and she immediately shrunk her head. It seemed that Nat was quite intimidating in front of Ava. While Nat was about to measure, Ava gave Chun Zhao another name card. She gestured at Chun Zhao with her hand. Call me. After Nat finished his preparations, he finally came to measure Chun Zhao's body. Chun, your body is really perfect. It's like a piece of art, full of power, but it doesn't destroy the beauty. With that, Nat patted Chun Zhao's butt. Turn around. Nat was always like this. He would habitually take advantage of Chun Zhao and then change the topic as if nothing had happened. Rubbing his forehead, Chun Zhao said, Nat, if you want, I can train you for free. If Knight really agreed, Chun Zhao wouldn't mind taking revenge on him. Unfortunately, Nat did not fulfill his wish. Forget it, I'm not your style, Knight said. I prefer this kind of neutral style. You call this neutral? Apart from your sexual characteristics, which part of you look like a man? Are you an idiot? All you can do is stand there. Don't you know how to lend a hand? Press the other end of the ruler down. Nate suddenly changed his attitude and shouted at Ava. Not only was Ava shocked, but Chun Zhao was also shocked. There was no doubt that Nat was an outstanding designer. However, his personality was truly unflattering. Just then, Zola pushed the door open and entered. Hi, Chun. Zola pulled a chair over and looked at Knight and Ava. Chun Zhao was the only one left, controlled by Knight. Zola. Chun Zhao nodded and continued to cooperate with Nat's torture. Your body is getting better. As long as you keep exercising, anyone can do it. I interact with models every day. I've seen at least 1,000 models' bodies, but I've never seen a man's body like yours. It's so thrilling. Zola shook her head. You look like a lion. You don't have exaggerated lines, but there's a mysterious danger. See, Chun, even Zola says that. That seemed to have found someone who understood him. Although Knight said that, he did not slack off at all in his work. His work was extremely meticulous. For example, the circumference of Chun Zhao's wrist, upper and lower wrist, neck circumference, neck length. Every measurement had to be carefully measured. Ava, grab that one, Nat scolded again. Even with Zola present, Nat's attitude towards Ava did not change at all. Just then, Zola stood up and pulled the other end of the ruler. Seeing that her boss had started, Ava could only retreat to the side and watch. Does it feel tight? Nat asked. A little looser. How about this? You can loosen it a little more, Chun Zhao said. Yeah, that's more like it. Chun, are you interested in buying shares in the Baroness? Are you sure? Chun Zhao looked at Zola in surprise. In the bank's evaluation, the Baroness was also a high-quality property. It provided Zola with generous returns every year. It could be said that as long as she asked the bank to use the Baroness shares as collateral, the bank could give a low-interest loan that was 5 times the Baroness valuation. Zola had 100% control over the shares. Even when her father, Rasfa, wanted to buy it, she rejected him. Ava found it strange. Finding a model to buy shares in the Baroness? I have no choice, Zola said helplessly. I'm really short on money recently. The bank didn't lend you money? The interest is still too high, Zola said. At least for me, it's too much pressure. Didn't I promise that as long as you need it, I can lend you money at the lowest interest? Zola shook her head. I need more money. How much? $1.5 billion. You don't need to pay that much, right? My father wants me to buy more shares, Zola said. He needs some cash flow. To put it bluntly, Zola and Rasfa were father and daughter. Zola was destined to inherit Rasfa's wealth in the future. The more Rasfa had, the more inheritance tax he would have to pay in the future. Thus, Rasfa and Zola wanted to reduce their wealth through some normal operations. Are you interested in the Baroness? Zola continued the previous topic. Yes, Chun Zhao said directly. How many shares are you planning to sell to me? Not more than 20%. Then how much are you planning to sell it for? Chen Zhao asked. At this moment, Knight's movements were a little sluggish. The Baroness' current market value is $5 billion. I want a 50% premium. According to your request, exactly $5 billion. Chen Zhao chuckled. I agree to the deal in general, but you can't decide the price alone. You should talk to my lawyer first. Chapter 2619. Ava felt that she'd just done something really stupid. She'd just used $2,000 to insult a billionaire. More accurately, she'd insulted herself. Hopefully, he wouldn't mind. Chen Zhao didn't plan on doing that. Or rather, he'd already forgotten about it. Okay, Chen, that said, your clothes for this season will take about 5 days. Thanks. Chen Zhao nodded and looked at Zola. Let's eat together. I'm afraid I won't be able to find time soon. The spring fashion show is about to start. I feel like you're busier than me. Zola rolled her eyes. Of course I'm busier than you. You're richer than me, but you give all the work to others while I have to do it myself. You can also choose to give it to others. We'll see, Zola said casually. Actually, Chen Zhao could understand a strong woman like Zola. It was simply unimaginable to throw his job to someone else. Moreover, not everyone was as lazy as Chen Zhao. As the saying went, power was the deadliest poison. No one could give it up. Chen Zhao's car drove out of the Baroness headquarters. Just then, a luxury car blocked Chen Zhao's path. Hi, Mr. Chen. Nice to meet you. I'm Madala. Hi, sorry, I'm in a hurry. Can you excuse me? Chen Zhao clearly didn't plan on getting to know this man who'd suddenly appeared. In fact, Chen Zhao didn't like this behavior. If he really wanted to get to know Chen Zhao, he had to be more polite. He shouldn't block Chen Zhao's way like this. Madala didn't mind Chen Zhao's attitude. Mr. Chen, I might have forgotten to introduce myself. I'm the CEO of Viller Investment Management Company. I have a large amount of cash. I can give you great rewards. You can contact my assistant or my lawyer. I'll consider your offer. Mr. Chen, since we've met, why don't we talk now or find a place? Sorry, I'm in a hurry. Madala clearly didn't realize that his behavior had already caused Chen Zhao's displeasure. Then let's push away the trivial matters. I don't think there's anything more important than our cooperation. Chen Zhao no longer planned on maintaining his disguise with Madala. Chen Zhao looked at Madala with a dark expression. If you want to work with me, you have to learn manners first. Hearing this, Matilla's face darkened as well. Yellow monkey, I dare you to say it again. White-skinned pig, when your mother gave birth to you, did she forget to teach you manners? When it came to arguing, Chen Zhao had never been afraid of anyone. You will pay for your words, monkey, Madala said fiercely. Chen Zhao pointed his middle finger at Madala. Chen Zhao wasn't someone who could be easily fooled. Matilla's eyes flashed with killing intent. Chen Zhao didn't care. Looks can't kill. On the way back, Chen Zhao called Alex. Alex, do you know Viller Investment Management? I know what's wrong. Today, there was a man who claimed to be the chairman of Viller Investment Management Company. I think he was called Madala. You didn't promise him anything, did you? No, that Madala really pissed me off. What do you know? I'm not very familiar with Viller Investment Management Company, but it's very famous in the industry. Is it very influential? No, it's just that they have a lot of dirty tricks up their sleeves. Most of the people or companies that work with them have been scammed by them without exception. What's their main trick? The most common method is to gain the trust of the partner and hand the company over to them to manage. Then, they will sell the company to a third party as an agent. They are very good at this kind of thing from a legal perspective. Once the transaction is completed, it will be impossible for the victim to get the company back, even if he wants to. Alex continued to say, this is what they do on the surface, but there are a lot of things that they don't do on the surface. It is said that some people were forced to hand over their companies to them. As for how they forced them, you can use your imagination. Although I know that you are very skilled in certain aspects, they are professionals. Kidnapping? Blackmail? That's about it. Anyway, it's just colluding with the local gangs and doing some shady business. You have to be careful. Okay, got it. As soon as Chen Zhao hung up, another call came in. The caller was none other than Mordery. Hey, Mordery, how come you have time to call me? Chen, someone wants to deal with you. I just got a job. Someone wants me to kidnap your family. Is that person called Madala? You already know. I just know this person. We just had a feud not too long ago. Do you need me to do anything? Chun Zhao and Morguri were the kind of people who wouldn't contact each other for tens of thousands of years. Even during festivals, they would only send each other a congratulatory message. But they both knew that they were each other's friends. They would only appear when the other person needed them. No need, Chun Zhao said calmly. After a moment of silence, Chun Zhao said, by the way, do you have anyone who's really short of money and willing to do anything for it? Ha! I have a lot of people like that. I want people who have something to care about, not people who have nothing to care about and are all alone. What do you want to do? Make something happen, of course. Chun Zhao's laughter had a hint of coldness. Then you better be more detailed. After all, they're not ordinary people. If there's just a little bit of evidence, they could get away. I know. Pick someone and tell him to go somewhere. I'll meet him there. Chun Zhao didn't plan on letting Morguri give him his contact number. Okay, got it. What else do you need me to do? Chun Zhao made another call. This time, it was to inform Alex. He told her that he had a plan. After a moment of silence, Alex agreed. Chun Zhao went to the kindergarten again. Chun, why are you here? School's not over yet. Clive looked at Chun Zhao's sudden visit in confusion. There's something I need to talk to you about. Someone might attack my children in the next few days, Chun Zhao said. If so, are you and Anpa confident in protecting them? If not, let them go on holiday for now. We'll talk about it after this is over. Divine King of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 2620. Berkeley was one of the poorest neighborhoods in Los Angeles. How poor was it? Up to 40% of the neighborhood was homeless. As far as the eye could see, there were only homeless people. Bull and his family lived in this neighborhood. Dirty and messy were no words to describe how poor the neighborhood was. Even the cashiers at the Golden Arches had bulletproof glass. Any restaurant was only open from 10 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. After 4 in the afternoon, one would definitely be robbed. Bull returned home. His wife's voice came immediately. Vitan, where did you go last night? His wife's tone carried a hint of questioning. Out drinking with friends, Bull replied tiredly. You know we need money now, right? You know Claire needs medical bills, right? You know we haven't paid our rent, utilities, and phone bills this month, right? You're still in the mood to drink? His wife's tone grew angrier. Why can't you find a proper job? You think I don't want to? But who would want a guy who's been in prison? Bull let out a deafening roar of his own. Then why are you in prison? The couple had already started their daily quarrel. At this moment, a timid voice interrupted the couple. A little girl, holding a dirty doll in her arms, stood by the bedroom door. Cough. Daddy, Mommy, did you fight again? The couple immediately stopped fighting. No, Mommy and Daddy are just acting. Then can you stop acting? Claire doesn't like it. Bull glared at his wife and then looked at his daughter as gently as possible. Of course, no problem. Claire's complexion was very bad. She was born with no immune system. She was also known as a glass person. Bull and his wife couldn't afford to create a completely isolated environment for her. So she had to take antibiotics constantly. But as she took more and more, the effect of the antibiotics was greatly reduced. Both her body and the bacteria in her began to develop resistance. This led to frequent infections in the past 2 years. The slightest symptom was a high fever. More serious was a physiological imbalance. Her bodily functions became seriously abnormal, and she even temporarily lost her function. The only way to completely solve Claire's disease was to change her system. That was to transplant someone else's bone marrow to create an immune system in her own body. Beauregard's marrow was a match for Claire's. However, a bone marrow transplant would cost $200,000. That was something Bull could never afford. Claire was 5 years old, and when she was a year old, Beauregard had been in prison. It was because she was desperate to raise money for Claire's surgery. The result was predictable. Not only did he not get the money, but he also went to jail. Daddy, I want you to sleep with me. All right. Bull had a ferocious look on his face, but when it came to his daughter, he didn't seem to mind at all. It was as if he had changed his face, never showing even a trace of viciousness. Lying on the bed with Claire in his arms, Claire whispered, Daddy, I feel a little uncomfortable. Borai's heart skipped a beat as he had a bad feeling. Are you feeling unwell? I feel like I can't breathe. Bowles sat up abruptly. When did it start? It started last night. Claire scratched her neck. There were many slight scratches on her neck. Every time I do this a few times, it seems to be better. Claire opened her mouth wide and started inhaling and exhaling. But this time, Claire didn't seem to be getting better. Bowles quickly informed his wife and dialed the emergency number. The couple had no time to bicker. They followed the ambulance to the hospital. Claire was sent to the emergency room, and the couple anxiously waited for the result outside. Not long after, the doctor walked out of the emergency room, took off his mask, and looked at the couple in front of him. "Are you the patient's parents?" "Yes." "How is Claire?" "Do you know the patient's exact condition?" The couple became more and more uneasy. Bowles asked, "What's wrong with Claire?" The bacterial infection caused a chain reaction that caused her respiratory tract to become inflamed. But she only took antibiotics 3 days ago. According to our blood test, the antibiotics are completely ineffective. That means she'll be infected as soon as she leaves the isolation room, the doctor said. "I suggest you arrange an operation for her immediately. Even if she's in the isolation room, it doesn't mean she's completely safe." Bowles slumped into a chair, his eyes filled with despair. His wife covered her face and sobbed softly. Just then, Bowles' phone rang. Bowles didn't answer, but it rang again. Bowles glanced at the caller ID and walked to an empty corner. "Boss, are you busy, Bowles?" "Boss, I want to borrow money from you." "How much?" $200,000. "I promise I'll pay you back, no matter the interest." "Bowles, are you short of money?" "My daughter needs an operation, but I can't afford it right now." "But I promise I have a way to get the money," Bowles promised. "Bowles, borrowing money is out of the question." Bowles' face turned ugly. He had expected this outcome. After all, he didn't have a stable job. The man was his boss, not his father. How could he lend him money? It would be a waste of money. But the man on the other end said, "I have a job. Are you willing to take it? If you do, the money for your daughter's operation should be no problem." "What job?" "I'll take it." "Jail." "What? Take the blame?" "Yes and no." "I don't understand. I'll give you an address. Go there and wait. Someone will contact you." "Sure." Bowles didn't have time to think. He hurried to the address. It was an empty beach. There wasn't a single person. Rocks and rotten wood were everywhere. Bowles waited there with a heavy heart. However, no one came even when the sky turned dark. Just when he thought that the person had stood him up, a figure appeared in the distance. Bowles immediately charged toward the figure. When he got closer, he realized that it was an Asian. Bowles asked hesitantly, "Are you the person our boss mentioned?" Chen Zhao smiled at Bowles. "You need money." Chapter 26-21. "Of course. If I didn't need money, do you think I'd be here?" Bowles said bluntly. "Then I'm the one you're waiting for. How much can you give me?" Bowles wanted to know how much money Chen Zhao could give him, not what he needed him to do. As long as the price was right, he didn't mind taking the blame for this Asian. "Enough for you to be a Hollywood star every day. I need the exact amount. I need a lot of money right now. Here's a check for $2 million. You can cash it at the bank now." Bowles was taken aback. $2 million USD. This wasn't what he'd expected. After all, taking the blame for someone in Los Angeles cost tens of thousands of dollars. $2 million. "You're not asking me to take the death penalty, are you?" Bowles paled in fear. "Are you willing to accept the death penalty?" Bowles' expression was conflicted. After a while, he finally looked up. "I'm willing." Chen Zhao finally smiled. "Don't worry, it's not the death penalty." Chen Zhao was also testing Bowles. He knew Bowles' rough situation. He knew that Bowles had a seriously ill daughter. He needed a lot of money. For the sake of his sick daughter, he could bear the consequences of trading his life for another's. This meant that he loved his daughter. This was what Chen Zhao needed. If Bowles didn't have anything to worry about, Chen Zhao wouldn't dare to use him. "Are you sure you want to give me a $2 million commission?" "It's not a commission. It's a deposit," Chen Zhao said calmly. "Deposit?" Bowles' eyes almost popped out. "Are you sure you're not messing with me? The check is in your hand. You can cash it at the bank now." "The bank is long closed now." "Huh. I made an appointment with a bank. They'll delay the closing time for me." Bowles looked at the check in his hand. "What exactly do you need me to do?" "My car's over there. I'll take you to the bank." Bowles thought for a moment and finally nodded. He didn't have anything for Chen Zhao to covet. The most valuable thing he had was the check in his hand. Chen Zhao had personally delivered it to him. Therefore, he did not need the other party to ask for anything from him. Sitting in Chen Zhao's luxury car and feeling the soft cushion, Bull asked, "Can you tell me now? In the next 2 days, someone will look for you and ask you to kidnap my family." Bewildered, Bull stared at Chen Zhao in astonishment. "And then? Record everything he said to you. Then, my family will disappear for a few days, and on the 3rd day after the incident, the police will break into your hiding place, arrest you, and rescue my family." Bull's mind was still in a daze. "And then? Then, you will expose that person. You will say that all of this was ordered by him. At the same time, you will take out all the evidence that you prepare beforehand. Do you have a grudge against that person? Since he found people to kidnap my family, of course, there's a grudge between them. But there should be a reason, right? Being rich is the biggest sin. 2 million is just your down payment. After it's done, you'll get the rest." "How much?" 8 million. You'll get 10 million in total. Aren't you afraid that I'll bite you after taking the money? If you work for me obediently, you can enjoy life after you get out, or you can live precariously with the 10 million. You have to be careful that I'll find you at all times. You won't even dare to use the money. Think about what kind of life you want. How many years is kidnapping? Under normal circumstances, 5 to 10 years, but you did well by exposing the person. I'll also arrange for a lawyer to reduce your sentence. You only need to stay in for 3 years, Chen Zhao said. Then, I'll arrange for you to perform well during your sentence. You probably won't be in there for more than 2 years. After a long silence, Bull finally asked the question that concerned him the most. "Will you silence me?" "You don't know me, so you don't know," Chen Zhao said. "But you should trust Morgary's reputation, right?" Bull couldn't help but look up at Chen Zhao. Morgary was the leader of the largest gang in L.A. In the past 2 years, he'd been like an emperor in L.A.'s underground world. However, he didn't just have an illustrious reputation. Another reason was that he had a great reputation. There had never been a case of a black con 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 on black con 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 black. He'd also said that even if the person he worked with came alone, he'd let them leave L.A. unharmed. This wasn't an exception either. It was a creed that Morgary followed to the end. In the past, Morgary had a line that sold some military weapons. After the two parties reached an agreement, the change in the market caused the price of the weapons to skyrocket. He still sold them at the agreed price. So, basically everyone on the streets of L.A. trusted Morgary now. As long as Morgary said it, he'd definitely fulfill his promise. So, when Chen Zhao mentioned Morgary, Bull somewhat believed him. "How are you going to give me the rest of the money?" Chen Zhao chuckled. "If I only give you 2 million, will you take the job?" Bull thought for a moment and nodded. "I will. So, I don't need to give you any more promises. 2 million is enough for you to work for me. Even 200,000 is enough. Since I've made such a precious promise, it only shows my sincerity," Chen Zhao said calmly. "Of course, if you want to know the exact steps, I'll explain it to you. You just need to open a joint account for your daughter. After each step, I'll transfer $2 million to the account until it's over. Unless you have a problem with a certain step, I'll stop the transfer." "That's right," Chen Zhao said. Chen Zhao was also subtly reminding Bull that he knew about his precious daughter. Even if Chen Zhao wouldn't really do anything to her, it was still enough to intimidate him. "Also, I need to remind you that if you change your statement halfway, you'll also be charged with perjury. It's not much lighter than your original crime. Plus, I won't let you walk out alive. So, from the moment you started this mission, you have to complete it. There's no turning back." "I know," Bull knew. After all, the biggest taboo in their line of work was being a fence-sitter. A fence-sitter might end up in a situation where neither side liked him. Chen Zhao's mission wasn't that hard to accept. In fact, it was much easier than the mission that he had originally thought would be a one-way trip. So, he didn't plan on betraying Chen Zhao. Chapter 26-22. Morgary, have you thought about what I told you yesterday? Hee. Mr. Madala, professional matters naturally have to be handled by professionals. Let me introduce you to someone. This person is the best at this kind of thing. In the past few years, he has made his move 3 times, and all 3 times he didn't fail. Oh, a professional? Who is it? Madala was immediately interested. His name is Bull. I'll give you his contact. Mr. Chun, I've received Matila's call and recorded his voice. Bull had confirmed that the $2 million check was real. This made him extremely excited. It meant that his daughter's surgery fee was finally going to be paid. Moreover, he only needed to spend 2 or 3 years in prison before he could come out and enjoy life. Unlike now, where he couldn't see the future. He could only live in gangs and muddle through his days. Day after day, year after year, with no hope at all. A recording isn't enough. I need more evidence. A recording of your direct contact with him, an image of you meeting him. It's best if you can lure him to say something serious. I understand, but what should I do next? My wife will be missing for a few days, Chen said calmly. Chen had already told Fei Lai that she would be absent from work for a few days. Of course, she would be staying at the supernatural organization's headquarters for a few days. Fei Lai didn't object to this. After all, Chen was doing this to protect her and her family. An enemy eyeing them covetously would never know when they would bare their fangs. Such an enemy was too big of a threat. Chen would take the initiative and kill the enemy. This was the wisest choice. As for getting her to cooperate, that was no problem at all. After all, they were family. After arranging for Fei Lai to stay at the supernatural organization's headquarters, Chen called the police. A billionaire's wife had been kidnapped. This was a very bad thing. The police obviously had a lot of influence. Then, the police found a sports car abandoned by the road. Madala was very surprised. He'd only met Bull once, and they'd just reached an agreement. Bull had succeeded in a day's time. Professional, as expected of a professional. Madala couldn't wait to call Bull. You've done well, Beauregard. Where are you? I'll send someone to bring you and the hostage over. I'm sorry, Mr. Madala. For the sake of everyone's safety, and for the plan to proceed smoothly, I don't want anyone else to know about this. So, I won't let anyone else know about my current location other than you. Besides, it's safer with the hostage in my hands, Bull said, pretending to be calm. What do you mean, Bull? Although you asked me to kidnap them, I'm carrying out a mission now. All right then, cut off one of that woman's fingers. I'll give it to that yellow-skinned monkey as a gift. If you want to do it, you do it. I won't do it. What do you mean you won't do it? Do you know how I succeeded in my previous kidnappings? First of all, I couldn't hurt the hostages to ensure that I had a way out. Madala narrowed his eyes, still thinking of a way out. I really don't know how this idiot survived until now. He had kidnapped the wife of a billionaire. How could that guy let him go? All right then, give me your hiding place. I'll go there myself. You can only come alone. Of course, I promise. Madala had already made up his mind to go over and kill Bull as well. That way, he wouldn't leak any information. Although Borlet had insisted that he should come alone, Borlet had not, but Madala clearly didn't intend to keep his promise. After hanging up the phone, Bull dialed Jin's number. He recounted the conversation he had with Madala again. You're saying that Bastard plans to go to your hiding place himself? Yes. Chen's eyes flashed. Maybe you won't have to go to jail. You'll become a hero from a criminal. I don't know what you're talking about. Call the police station. Tell them that. Madala brought his men to the location Bull had given him. However, there was a rather large forest in front of them. They couldn't even tell the direction here, let alone find a cabin. This guy really knows how to hide, Madala said, spitting. At the same time, he said to his men behind him, all of you, prepare your guns and listen to my orders. Got it, boss. His subordinates answered confidently. It wasn't the first time they had done something like this with Madala. Meanwhile, in the cabin deep in the forest, Chun, Fei Lai, and Gaia were all here. Chun, Fei Lai, and Gaia were all here. Of course, Bull was here too. Bull, remember your mission. This hut used to be a resting place for hunters in the past. You came here to hunt, but you discovered that the hut was occupied. You took advantage of the time when those people left to rescue my wife. Chen took out a cut rope and threw it on the ground. Then you had a gunfight with them. This is your gun. Will the police believe me? Maybe the police won't believe you, but they believe my wife. Or do you want to follow the original script and go to jail for a few years? I'll listen to you, Mr. Chen. You won't be a criminal anymore. You'll be your daughter's hero, Chen said, patting Bowl's shoulder. In an instant, Bo or I became excited. Chen Weiwei tilted her head. They're here. Get ready. Gaia, let's hide too. Okay. Gaia nodded. Fei Lai, Chen and I will be outside. Got it. Fei Lai knew that Chen wouldn't go far, so she wasn't worried at all. Chen and Gaia hid nearby, secretly observing and monitoring the situation. Bowl was leaning against the window of the cabin, pointing his gun outside. Don't be so nervous, Fei Lai said, crossing her legs. Chen's nearby. It'll be fine. I heard that a few people came. I only have a gun. Bowl was still nervous. He wouldn't relax just because of Fei Lai's words. I need to hold on until the police arrive. That's because you don't know my husband, Fei Lai said calmly. I hope so. Bowl was still worried. After all, the enemy's bullets wouldn't stop Chen's plan. Chapter 26-23. Boss, there's a small wooden house up ahead. I think it's Bowl's hiding place. Good. Load all the bullets. Kill him as soon as you see him, and then take the woman away. Madala had been searching here for half an hour. He was sweating profusely and covered in mud. This had also worn away all of his patience. Boss, I heard that the woman is very pretty. After I'm done, it'll be your turn. Madala chuckled. Suddenly, there was a gunshot. The man who had been talking and laughing with him just a moment ago suddenly exploded into a beautiful flower of blood. Madala froze on the spot in fright. His body was immediately pushed to the ground by the man. Damn, what's going on? Madala yelled. Boss, the bullet came from the wooden house, the man guessed. It should be a shotgun. It's a person. Do you know who it is? It might be a hunter. Where's Bowl? Where's that bastard? Madala roared. Kill the guy in the house, no matter who he is. Shoot, shoot. Another bullet splashed the dirt around Madala. Madala quickly hugged his head and pressed his face into the dirt. Boss, that guy is Bowl. I saw him. I saw his face. Bastard. That bastard. Madala was furious. Kill the traitor and kill him. Kill him. I want him to die a horrible death. Chen looked at the battlefield. At the same time, he said to Gaia, Gaia, Matila's car is parked outside the forest. There are some of his cigarette butts and used tissues. How do you know? Gaia asked, surprised. I just know. Gaia already understood Chen's intention. She was more familiar with such methods than Chen. If daily items like cigarette butts and tissues were found at the scene of the crime, it would become crucial evidence. Fei Lai was also a crucial witness. Madala would not be able to escape. Looks like smoking in the car isn't just harmful to health, Gaia said, smiling. I'll go now. Hurry up. The police are not far from here. Do you need me to shoot them? As long as you're happy. Give me the gun. Not far away. Gaia pointed to the first of Matila's men who had been shot dead. His gun had also fallen to the ground. At this moment, no one noticed that a gun was flying by itself. Bowl and Madala and his men were engaged in a tense exchange of shots. Oddly enough, Bowl was unscathed. On the other hand, 4 of Matila's men had already been shot dead. Other than Madala, there were still 3 people left. However, they didn't know that everything about them was being manipulated by someone. Even the bullets they fired were being controlled by someone else. Every one of Matila's men who had been killed had been carefully manipulated by Chen. They were Chen's marionettes. Boss, he seems to be out of bullets. Kill your way in. I'm going to kill him. Madala roared furiously. Matila's men speculated that Bowl had run out of bullets. However, Madala still hid behind his men. Bowl had killed 4 of his men. He did not want to be the next one. Bowl, on the other hand, pulled the trigger several times in a row inside the wooden hut. *T, I'm out of bullets. What do we do? The police aren't here yet. Bowl shouted nervously. Don't worry, they'll be here soon. Just then, the door was kicked open from the outside. 3 of Matila's men rushed in first and pointed their guns at Bowl. Bowl, I'm going to kill you. Madala also raised his gun and pointed it at Bowl. Just then, 3 of Matilla's men were shot in the head without any warning. Matilla was stunned. Bull was also stunned. He turned around in confusion. Looking at the 3 bodies, his face was full of confusion. There were only a few of them in the hut. Bull and the woman didn't have guns, but why were their men shot in the head? He didn't understand. Suddenly, Phalai said to Bull, "There's still 1 bullet in his gun. You took the bullet from me without caring about yourself? Huh?" Bull's chest was hit by a bullet. Matilla was dumbfounded. Why did his gun suddenly fire on its own? He didn't pull the trigger. Why did this happen? Then, loud noises came from outside. "Don't move. Hands up." More than a dozen police officers had already appeared outside the hut. They saw Matilla raise his gun inside the door. Matilla stood rooted to the spot in fear, not daring to move. He had never been pointed at by a dozen guns before. He had never known how scary it felt to have a gun pointed at him. "Drop the gun. Now. Now." Matilla did as he was told and dropped the gun. Then, a policeman pounced on Matilla. "What are you doing? Let me go. Do you know who I am?" Just then, the other police officers came in one after another. "Miss, are you okay?" "I'm fine. Luckily, this gentleman saved me. If it wasn't for him, I'd be in big trouble. We still need your help. Can you come back with us?" "What about him?" Phalai pointed at Bull. "I think he'll be taken care of." "All right then. You've all been tricked by this woman. I'm the victim. They teamed up to trick me too." Pressed to the ground, Matilla was still not obedient. How could he not realize that he'd been tricked? Bull and Chun had already teamed up. No, Bull had been introduced by Morgari. In other words, Morgari and Chun had teamed up too. But thinking about it, Morgari was a local power. How could Chun not be related to Morgari when he was rooted here? This meant that they knew each other, and they were very close. They teamed up to make him jump into a trap. Matilla only wanted to contact his lawyer as soon as possible. Phalai glanced at Matilla with a mocking expression. He still hadn't figured out the situation. It wasn't up to him now. What he said was the truth. Soon, Phalai was sent to the police station. After receiving the notice, Chun rushed to the police station anxiously. The couple acted out a bitter scene of reunion after a long separation. First, they hugged and kissed in front of everyone, then confessed. "How was my performance?" Phalai asked in a low voice. "If possible, I'd like the Oscars to give you an award," Chun replied. Chapter 26-24. The police found a lot of evidence at the crime scene. There was also Phalai's testimony. The conflict between Chun Zhao and Matilla became key pieces of evidence as well. It had to be said that Matilla was looking for trouble. When the police searched Matilla's study, they found a document that transferred his assets for free. Thus, the police easily deduced that Matilla had kidnapped Phalai to steal Chun Zhao's assets. The document was originally prepared for Chun Zhao, but now it was Matilla's death warrant. No matter how Matilla tried to defend himself, it was useless. Moreover, when the police arrived at the small forest, they had been shot. Therefore, Matilla's crimes were added to the list: assaulting a police officer, attempted murder, kidnapping for ransom, and unfair business competition. Moreover, his past crimes were investigated one by one. It was not an exaggeration to say that Matilla would be kicked when he was down. With the help of some people with ulterior motives, Matilla quickly turned from a billionaire to a notorious villain. On the other hand, Bull went from a street thug to a hero. Chun Zhao had the right to thank Bolai for it. Bull did not think that he would have such an encounter. He had been prepared to go to jail. But the result was completely different from what he had expected. Not only had his identity changed, but his social status had also changed. Before, he had only been a thug living in the slums. Now, he no longer had to worry about money. He no longer had to worry about his daughter's surgery fees. He no longer had to worry about his precarious life. Chun Zhao pushed open the door and saw Bull lying on the bed. Hearing the door, Bull turned his head and saw Chun Zhao walking in. Bull wanted to sit up immediately. Smiling, Chun Zhao placed the bouquet in the vase beside him. "Mr. Chun." "Yes, lie down. No need to sit up." Chun Zhao pulled a chair over. Bull was about to speak, but Chun Zhao suddenly waved his finger. "Wait." Chun Zhao found a bug under Bull's bed. "It's done," Chun Zhao said, smiling. "Mr. Chun, this is nothing." Madala is rich too. It's easy for him to bribe the doctors or nurses here. Then, it's just a small toy, Chun Zhao said nonchalantly and crushed the bug. Chun Zhao was surprised that he could discover the bug. To be precise, he had discovered the weak electric current emitted by the tapping device. Your performance was very good, even better than I expected. Bull was afraid of Chun Zhao, because it seemed like Chun Zhao had already left that day. However, Bull knew that Chun Zhao had been secretly controlling the situation. He didn't know how Chun Zhao did it either. But during the gunfight, he seemed to have become a sharpshooter. Bull had killed 5 of Matilla's men with a mere shotgun. As for the last 3, their heads exploded without any warning right in front of him. After all, there was not a single bullet in his shotgun at that time. Plus, he and Fei Lai were unarmed in that small wooden hut at the time. In that kind of situation, the other 3 inexplicably had their heads explode. This was also his greatest confusion. Of course, he didn't get to the bottom of this. After all, Chun Zhao wouldn't tell him so easily. Mr. Chun, it's what I should do. What should be done? That wasn't justice. Chun Zhao only smiled faintly. There's nothing that you should or must do. It's just a choice, but you made the right choice. Chun Zhao stood up again. This is my phone number. If you need me in the future, I can help you with one thing. At least in a qualified world, I should be able to solve most things. Of course, the prerequisite is that your request doesn't conflict with my principles. Chun Zhao stood up again. Bull silently put the number away. Chun Zhao turned and left. Then he went home. Because of Fei Lai's special experience, Robio gave Fei Lai a few days off. Home is still the best. Fei Lai leaned against the oak tree, enjoying the lake breeze. Just then, Portia jogged over. Fei Lai, congratulations for coming back safely. Thank you. Where's Zephyra? Didn't she come to work today? Chun Zhao asked. 2 days ago, Revela's face was full of anxiety. However, she happened to hear that Miss Fei Lai had been kidnapped, so she asked me to help her apply for leave. She left in a hurry, Portia said. Boss, could Revela have encountered some trouble? Chun Zhao picked up the phone and called Zephyra. But the call didn't go through. It was outside the server's range. Chun Zhao could only put down the phone helplessly. Did Zephyra leave any way to contact you? No. Chun Zhao's heart became heavy again, because he had to get rid of Madala 2 days ago. Thus, Chun Zhao hadn't paid attention to other problems. He'd promised Zephyra that he would help her. But because of Matilla's matter, Chun Zhao had neglected Zephyra. Moreover, Zephyra was a strong-minded person. She would hardly ask for help from others casually. And when she really opened her mouth, that would be when she was in big trouble. She would only speak when she had no other choice. Chun, did something happen to Zephyra? A few days ago, Zephyra said that there's a very powerful enemy. She's not confident if she's alone, Chun Zhao said seriously. Portia was beside him, so Chun Zhao didn't explain too clearly. However, Fei Lai could roughly understand what Chun Zhao meant by powerful enemy. Is there a way to find her current location? Maybe I can find the organization behind her. Chun Zhao had no clue now. He could only find clues from the Dragon Slayer organization behind her. Although Zephyra had already left the organization, the information she'd received should be from the organization. However, the information she obtained should have been obtained from the Dragon Slayer organization. Thus, the organization should know where Zephyra was. However, to contact the organization, Chun Zhao needed the supernatural organization's help. I'm going out, Chun Zhao said. Go, and bring Zephyr back safely. I'll try. Chun Zhao hurried to the supernatural organization. However, Chun Zhao didn't have high hopes for this. The supernatural organization was now considered the top supernatural organization in North America. In the entire world, it could be considered a second-tier organization. But purely in terms of strength, foundation, and intelligence, it was the weakest. Thus, Chun Zhao really didn't have much confidence in the supernatural organization's intelligence ability. 9 Heaven's Divine Emperor. Chapter 26-25. President, I've heard of the Dragon Slayer Society, West said, but they're very mysterious and have almost no connection to the spiritual world. It won't be easy to find them. Okay, try your best. I'll see if I can get more information from other places. Chen believed that if the supernatural organization had enough time, it was not impossible to find out about the Dragon Slayer Society. But the key problem was that Chun did not have time to wait for information from the supernatural organization. More accurately, Refra did not have that much time. So, Chun could not pin his hopes on the supernatural organization. After leaving the supernatural organization, Chun called Zhang Tianyi. Hey, old Zhang, do you know about the Dragon Slayer Society? Yes, why? Zhang Tianyi sounded very unfriendly. You have a grudge against the Dragon Slayer Society? Of course. The Dragon Slayer Society chased after my granddaughter-in-law. Do you think I have a grudge against them? Then do you know where to find the Dragon Slayer organization? Are you going to cause trouble for them? Not in theory. Then in reality? No. I'm not familiar with them. Really? With the grudge between us, if I could find them, are you sure they'd still exist? Can't you find them? I don't. Ask Blood Mary or Bifla. Chen hung up in disappointment. Then, he called Bifla and 23rd generation Blood Mary. However, the two did not have any information about the Dragon Slayer Society. Chen thought that the Dragon Slayer Society should be a famous organization. Therefore, he should know quite a lot of people. But after walking around, he realized that the Dragon Slayer Society was not as strong as he thought. Chen was rather disappointed. The Dragon Slayer Society seemed to be a small organization. They had a certain amount of fame, but they were not very powerful. This could be seen from the three bosses' attitude toward the Dragon Slayer Society. All three knew about the Dragon Slayer Society, but the three had no way to find them. At least in a short time, they could not find the Dragon Slayer Society. Either the Dragon Slayer Society was so well hidden that even they could not find them, or the three bosses were not interested in them, so they did not even need to contact them. At this moment, the Marks family's territory was completely shrouded in fog. This was no longer the Sunny Manor. This place was like a ghost town, making one's hair stand on end. Thousands of spiritualists had gathered outside the Marks family's residence. All of them came from all over the world, and there were spiritualists from North America. There were also spiritualists from China. Even Varian couldn't believe it. How many sins had Tim Moore Haber committed? He was actually able to attract the attacks of so many spiritualists. Varian Marks found her teammate in the crowd. Michael, what's going on? Why are there so many people here? I don't know either. Michael was a short man, about 5 meters tall, with a baby face. In fact, Michael was already 45 years old. He was the youngest among the Dragon Slayers to awaken his dragon bloodline. It was also because of his Dragon Clan bloodline that caused his body to stagnate, and he maintained the appearance of a 12-year-old. How did you send the message? I just found an acquaintance and told him that Tim Haber was here. I don't know how it spread, but so many people came. There were so many spiritualists here, and they basically formed a small group of dozens. These small groups of spiritualists did not communicate with others. This was because the Dragon Slayers did not have much contact with most spiritualists. That was why Varian didn't recognize any of the spiritualists present. Just then, a small group of people came over from not far away. The leader of the group was a girl who looked young. When Varian Marks saw the girl, she lifted her chin slightly. With a somewhat arrogant tone, she said, "Isn't this the genius girl, Refra? I heard that you've already quit the Dragon Slayers. Why are you suddenly here? Do you find the ordinary life boring? Are you here for some excitement?" Refra glanced at Valerie Marks expressionlessly. Varian Max was her senior. When she first entered the industry, she had heard of Varian Max's name. She was at the top of the Dragon Slayers. Refra had once killed a giant dragon. Among the Dragon Slayers, she had the title of Genius Girl. She was the youngest Dragon Slayer in history to kill a giant dragon. However, in her career as a Dragon Slayer, Varian had killed 6 giant dragons. She had also killed 6 giant dragons. This was also a record, an unprecedented record. She had surpassed any Dragon Slayer in the past, and it would be difficult for her to have such a glorious record in the future. In terms of reputation, Varian was much more powerful than Refra. The two were not on the same level at all. However, the two of them were like natural enemies. Every time they met, they would not be nice to each other. "Varian, did you call all these people here?" Zevra went straight to the point. A gloomy expression appeared on Varian Mark's face. Then, she shook her head silently. The situation doesn't seem right. Varian Marks didn't hide her guess. These spiritualists are all from different forces, and none of them are alone. They seem to have obtained some information, and the information they know might be different from others. Moreover, they don't intend to share the information they have. Do you know any spiritualists here? I don't know any of them. I can only recognize the symbols of a small number of organizations. They should be spiritualists from small to medium-sized organizations or sections. I'm worried that this is Haber's trap. Then do you have any good ideas? No, Refra replied coldly. Although they did not like each other, when there was trouble, the first thing they would do was to cooperate and not undermine each other. This was the custom of dragon slayers, because their enemies were dragons that were far stronger than them. If they still schemed against each other and stabbed each other in the back, they would definitely not be able to defeat the giant dragons. Can I leave here? Jane Fankel asked. Iyer stood beside her. Although he did not speak, his eyes conveyed the same meaning. When I came in, the outside was already blocked by a few groups of spiritualists, Refra said, glancing at Jane Fankel. Chapter 26:26. Jane Fankel and Ariel's expressions crumbled. They were just ordinary people. Even if Varian Marks said that they shared the same bloodline, it was impossible. But in the end, they had only been exposed to supernatural things for 2 to 3 days. They had been completely trapped in the fog for the past 2 to 3 days. They did not have any contact with the outside world. Not long ago, a large group of spiritualists suddenly appeared outside and walked through the fog without any scruples. They had thought that their chance to leave had come. They did not expect that these spiritualists would not only come in by themselves, they would not let others leave. This made the two of them feel despair. Were all these people crazy? Even if they were here to slay dragons, this should not stop them from leaving. They are now cleaning up the strange dragons in the fog and trying to seal off the information here. I really don't understand what they are trying to do, Zephyr said. Don't they know that these strange dragons can't be cleaned up? Varian asked in confusion. These strange dragons were not living creatures. They were the physical manifestation of Haber's power. Haber could create as many strange dragons as he wanted. I can understand if an idiot does something so stupid, but if more than 1,000 people do the same thing, then we are the idiots. Maybe we don't know what they are trying to do. What do they do after killing the strange dragons? Collect the remains of the strange dragons, including their blood and eyeballs. Are these things very valuable in the spiritual world? Maybe they are used for other purposes. Can you guess what they are trying to do? There's no need to guess. They will attack the manor tonight. We will know then. More than 1,000 spiritualists were comparable to a modern army, even if they were not using firearms. But they were almost like the superpowers in the X-Men. Haber's domain could not be strong enough to withstand the attack of more than 1,000 spiritualists. Therefore, these more than 1,000 spiritualists had almost effortlessly attacked Max's manor. The Dragon Slayer team, led by Varian and Zephyra, also followed the rest of the troops into Max's manor. Jane Fankel and Ariel found that in just a few days, the place seemed to be filled with strange plants. These plants looked abnormally twisted and did not look like normal living things. Don't get close to these plants. They will, just as Varian reminded Jane Fankel and Ariel, a blood-curdling scream came from afar. A spiritualist who did not understand the dangers of the plants reached out to touch a draconic tree. In the end, the dragon blood tree opened a bloody mouth and bit off the spiritualist's wrist. As dragon slayers, Varian and Zephyr were well aware of the dangers of the dragon blood plants. These dragon blood plants were all cultivated with the blood of the dragon clan. After coming into contact with the dragon's blood, most of them would immediately wither and die. However, a small number of plants will mutate. For example, the dragon blood tree had a huge mouth. This was considered child's play. Some dragon blood plants even possessed certain characteristics of the dragon race. That was the most dangerous dragon blood plant. As expected, more cases of the dragon blood plants attacking the spiritualists appeared one after another. However, facing a large number of spiritualists, the attacking dragonblood plants were quickly destroyed. Chun Zhao was frustrated. There was no news from Zephyr at all. On the other hand, he could not get any news from his side. This made him even more frustrated. Chun Zhao planned to find a place to vent his frustration. In reality, there weren't many places where Chun Zhao could vent his frustrations. Thus, he chose the Tower of Trials. He hadn't been to the Tower of Trials in a while. He had passed the 9th level. However, he did not enter the 10th level. This was because the handsome guy had once said that the difficulty of the Tower of Trials would increase exponentially with each level he went up. Last time, Chun Zhao had brought more Raz to the 9th level. If he teamed up, the difficulty would increase again. When he entered the 9th level alone, he was only a dragon. However, after teaming up with more Raz, he became a 3-headed dragon. The difficulty of 3 dragons was not 3 times higher, but at least 5 times higher. Chun Zhao had improved a lot since the last time he passed the 9th level. He was confident that he could pass the 10th level. Chun Zhao went to the headquarters, planning to find someone to team up with. It should not be difficult to pass the 10th level alone. Just as Chun Zhao was thinking about who to bring in, he saw Lindsay Beyonce sitting on the grass with a wretched expression. "Hey, Lindsay, what are you doing? It's none of your business." Lin Beyonce's attitude was still as rude as before. "How about going to the Tower of Trials with me? I barely passed the 1st level alone. It'll be much more difficult if I team up. I don't want to die with you." Lindsay had heard from her friends how powerful Chun Zhao was every now and then, but she had never seen it with her own eyes. So she thought it was just Chun Zhao's subordinates bragging. She had experienced the Tower of Trials many times. She knew how difficult the Tower of Trials was. "Don't you want to go to the top level? I'll take you there." "I don't want to. If you want to die, you can do it yourself." Lin Beyonce refused without hesitation. "That's not up to you." Chun Zhao grinned. "What do you do if I don't go?" The next moment, Lindsay realized that Chun Zhao could really do anything without her permission. She couldn't do anything about it. She realized that she was bound. Not only was his body bound by an invisible hand, but his body was also restrained. Her body was also floating. "You Asterisk Shoal, what do you want? Team up with me, of course." Fine. Let go of me, and I'll agree." "Damn Asterisk Shoal." Only then did Chun Zhao let go of Beyonce. "Since you want to die, why drag me with you? How did I offend you?" Lindsay didn't think about running. She couldn't escape anyway, so she might as well be stubborn. It was just dying once. It was no big deal. "Because your attitude pisses me off." The two teamed up and entered the 1st level of the Tower of Trials. "Hurry and find a good position. Don't let the monsters surround us. Otherwise, it'll be hard for us to escape." It seemed that it wasn't Lindsay's first time teaming up. She was very experienced and immediately told Chun Zhao where to stand. 9 Heaven's Divine King. Chapter 26-27. Leonard Beyonce yelled, "You idiot. I shouldn't have agreed to your request." Chun Zhao looked at the first layer of monsters surrounding him. These were the monsters of their team. They were many times stronger than solo players. Even in solo mode, it was hard to escape when surrounded by monsters. Unless it was someone with a strong body like Gaia or Jinkura, who could take a few rounds of damage. Or someone with agility and speed like an elite and Dongya Tianchi. But Chun Zhao really didn't look like someone who could escape from this kind of encirclement. Also, from the way he controlled himself, he should be a control-type spell. Could it be that this fellow had dragged him in just to let him die once? This Asterisk Shoal, the monsters had completely surrounded her. Lin Beyonce covered her eyes. It should be soon. Just a moment of pain, and then it would be over. It wasn't Lindsay's first time experiencing this. When she'd first joined the supernatural organization, she'd been thrown into the Tower of Trials directly. So, the feeling of being killed in the Tower of Trials wasn't unfamiliar at all. But the pain and torture she'd been waiting for didn't come. Instead, she received the notification that she'd passed. Stunned, Lindsay put down her hands and realized that the monsters around her had all disappeared. What just happened? Lin Beyonce looked at Chun Zhao in confusion. Unfortunately, Chun Zhao didn't give her a satisfactory answer. Then, Lindsay entered the second level of the Tower of Trials in team mode for the first time. This time, Lindsay wasn't as agitated and flustered as she'd been in the first level. Instead, she looked at Chun Zhao with a confused expression. She wanted to see what he was going to do next. Once again, the monsters surrounded him in a dense crowd. Chun Zhao remained expressionless as he calmly looked at the monsters surrounding him. Lin Beyonce was so nervous that she was about to explode, but Chun Zhao was still unmoved. He watched as the monsters got closer and closer. Chun Zhao finally raised his hand. He extended 2 fingers from his right hand and pressed down. Whoosh! At that moment, Lise Beyonce was blinded by blood. Everything was dyed red. All the monsters, hundreds and thousands of them, were crushed into meat paste in an instant. Blood splattered everywhere. All of a sudden, Lin Beyonce was furious. Everyone's hair stood on end. She felt as if her breathing was about to stop. It was so painful that he couldn't breathe. All of them were painstakingly fighting against these monsters. But Chun Zhao only used 2 fingers to stop the battle. Then came the 3rd layer, and the result was the same. 4th floor, 5th floor, 6th floor, 7th floor, 8th floor. Lin Beyonce felt that Chun Zhao might have mastered some kind of bug. That was why he was able to clear the stage so easily. Yes, that's right, it must be a bug. Finally, he reached the 9th floor. Chun Zhao was not too surprised. 3 dragons. When the 3 dragons appeared before Chun Zhao, Beyonce found it hard to breathe again. The overwhelming pressure made it hard for her to breathe. Facing an enemy of this level, Chun Zhao's small world's gravity was useless. Dragons' physical and magic resistance were basically at the pinnacle of all creatures. Putting aside the special existences of certain species, they were the strongest creatures. Chun Zhao looked at the 3 dragons. The 3 dragons immediately began to attack in a frenzy. Move away. Don't let the dragon blood touch you. It'll be troublesome. Lin Beyonce couldn't move at all. She couldn't move under the pressure of the 3 dragons. Forget it. Chun Zhao walked forward. The next moment, Chun Zhao's figure suddenly disappeared from the spot. The next moment, a dragon fell from the sky. However, the way he landed was not a normal landing. He fell with a crooked neck. Chun Zhao was on the dragon's crooked neck. Just now, Chun Zhao had broken the dragon's neck with 1 kick. Then he looked up at the 2 dragons in the sky. Chun Zhao lifted his hands and pulled hard. Get down. Chun Zhao's small world's gravity couldn't crush them to death, but it was still powerful enough to pull them down from the sky. However, to Chun Zhao's surprise, he only managed to pull down 1 dragon. The other dragon was the largest. He actually managed to control his body and didn't fall right in front of Chun Zhao. Chun Zhao didn't mind. Hundreds of small black balls appeared around Chun Zhao. It directly hit the body of the falling dragon. In an instant, the giant dragon was riddled with holes. Chun Zhao's gaze landed on the large dragon at the end. He condensed another 100 small black balls. The dragon was terrified by Chun Zhao's power, but it didn't panic. However, he did not panic. Instead, he formed a barrier around him. Bang, bang, bang. The deafening sound reverberated continuously. The small black balls collided with the barrier. Chun Zhao's black balls actually didn't break through the barrier. This surprised Chun Zhao. This dragon was clearly much stronger than the 2 he'd killed before. Just then, huge stone spikes appeared around the dragon in the sky and shot toward Chun Zhao. Chun Zhao was surprised. This dragon's combat power and attributes were similar to his. It was a weaker version of himself. Lin Beyonce was dumbfounded. Was this the president that she thought was just messing around all day? To be honest, in Lin Beyonce's eyes, Chun Zhao was a messing around president. Sometimes she even suspected that West had made Chun Zhao a mere figurehead. Because in the supernatural organization, West could give all orders. On the other hand, Chun Zhao was more like air. In the organization, West was more like a president. Ever since she joined the organization, she participated in almost 20 battles, big and small. But Chun Zhao hadn't participated in any of them. This was also why Lin Beyonce always looked down on Chen Zhao. It was hard for anyone to respect such an air person. But now, Chen Zhao seemed to be a different person. At the same time, she also understood that Chen Zhao didn't need to participate in those battles. What was the point of shooting a mosquito with a cannon? Chen Zhao looked at the dragon in the sky. The dragon seemed to sense danger and immediately flapped its wings to fly into the sky. A small black ball condensed in Chen Zhao's hand and shot toward the dragon. The power of the small black ball was 100 times greater than the power of the small world condensed before. Boom! A ripple exploded in the sky. The terrifying power sent the dragon flying thousands of meters away and smashing into the ground. Chapter 26-28. The dragon was heavily injured. Chen Zhao immediately pounced. Just then, the dragon flipped over. Its limbs were on the ground, and it roared. Earth spikes shot up from the ground. Chen Zhao didn't care about them at all. Even when the spikes stabbed him, he ignored them. In the blink of an eye, Chen Zhao had already reached the dragon. The dragon hurriedly covered itself with a layer of rocks. But Chen Zhao still ignored it and punched. Rocks flew and blood splattered everywhere. Their attacks were very similar. Therefore, at this time, the deciding factor for victory or defeat was pure strength. Facing Chen Zhao's overwhelming strength, the dragon couldn't fight back at all. "I surrender. I surrender," the dragon roared. "I'm willing to worship you as my master." But Chen Zhao didn't plan on showing mercy. After all, he already had a dragon as a pet. Even if Abidos was still a young dragon. But this had nothing to do with him being an adult. Chen Zhao didn't need a second dragon as a pet. But the dragon's defense was indeed shocking. At least, it didn't die under Chen Zhao's punches. Even if Chen Zhao didn't use his full strength. Even an aircraft carrier would be smashed into scrap metal if these punches were to land on it. However, this dragon was still alive and kicking. At least, Chen Zhao didn't give it a fatal injury. Something was wrong. Something was wrong with this guy. He could actually take my punches that weighed 1,000,000 tons. Even though each of my punches made his skin split open. He didn't seem as heavily injured as Chen Zhao had imagined. But in the eyes of others, it was a one-sided slaughter. In the distance, Lindsay Beyonce watched as Chen Zhao killed the dragon with each punch. She almost peed her pants. Chen Zhao realized that he really couldn't kill the dragon in his normal state. At least, he needed a long time to kill it. Chen Zhao finally stopped. The dragon was in pain too. After all, he was willing to be his grandson. He was actually thinking about how to kill him. If not for his thick skin, he would probably be a pile of meat now. He would probably be a pile of rotten meat now. In fact, apart from the beginning, Chen Zhao had seriously thought about killing the dragon. In the end, Chen Zhao was a bit angry. He just wanted to see how many punches the dragon could take. He had to admit that the dragon was really tough. "All right, you won my interest." He had never said this to anyone else. But now, he said such a sentence to a giant dragon. "Tell me, why are you able to withstand my fist, and I'll let you live. Sign a master-servant contract with me first." The dragon was really worried that Chen Zhao would kill it after knowing the truth. He knew that the human in front of him had the ability to kill him. It was more troublesome to kill someone in the boxing ring. You had to punch your opponent to death. That was not an easy thing to do. But in the arena, killing someone wasn't as simple as a fist. The reason why this human didn't kill him was because he was interested in him. But once this point disappeared, with how cruel this human was, would he spare his own life? How do I sign it? Chen Zhao knew the general steps, but he didn't know the details. At that moment, the dragon drew a magic circle on the ground with its claws and dripped a drop of its blood into the magic circle. You can also drip a drop of blood into it. After that, you will receive a spiritual resonance. You just need to accept this spiritual resonance. Chen Zhao wasn't worried that the dragon would play tricks. Of course, the dragon didn't play any tricks either. During the spiritual resonance, Chen Zhao found out that this guy was called Saboni's Angel Haber. Unlike his demon servants, Chen Zhao couldn't ask for too much even though they were inferior to Chen Zhao. But Saboni's was different. He was a complete servant, a slave. This meant that Chen Zhao could ask for anything other than suicide. Saboni's couldn't disobey any of Chun Zhao's orders. Chun Zhao also found out from Saboni's spiritual communication. Saboni's was an earth elemental dragon, but he was different from other earth elemental dragons. He was better at physical attacks. Moreover, the skills he developed weren't pure magic. Most of them were physical attacks that were modified with earth elemental magic. Of course, these physical attacks still had magic elements. The reason why his skin was so thick was also explained. He shifted Chun Zhao's attacks to the ground. For example, the first time Chun Zhao blasted him down from the sky, he was severely injured. But after that, Chun Zhao punched him over 100 times, but the damage wasn't as much as the previous one. At the same time that they signed the contract, Chun Zhao and Lindsay Beyonce also received the notification that they had passed. Saboni's wasn't a unit. He was only Chun Zhao's pet and part of Chun Zhao's combat power. Therefore, the difficulty wouldn't increase because of him. Lin Beyonce was very nervous at this moment. She followed Chun Zhao to the 10th floor. Saboni's was still a bit dull. He didn't know that he was in the Tower of Trials. He even thought that he was in a complete world. The moment Chun Zhao reached the 10th floor, his expression changed slightly. Saboni's, protect this little guy, Chun Zhao said seriously. There would be a huge battle next. This was because Chun Zhao could already sense 12 terrifyingly powerful auras approaching them from the front. The owners of the 12 auras were all giant dragons. But they weren't ordinary adult dragons. They were 12 dragons at the level of dragon fathers. Soon, Saboni's also sensed that the 12 terrifying auras were approaching him. Master, run. Chun Zhao didn't run. Instead, he stood there expressionlessly. Around him, 12 small black balls started forming. Level 1 and 2 of the primordial regression technique. Lindsay Beyonce looked at Chun Zhao, who wasn't far away. He seemed to be preparing to run. What's he doing? Is he preparing for a 100-meter sprint? Lindsay Beyonce asked, pointing at Chun Zhao's back, confused. What's a 100-meter sprint? Saboni's asked, confused. He also found Chun Zhao's action strange, but he was more curious about the 100-meter sprint. After all, he'd been trapped on the 9th floor his entire life and didn't know the outside world at all. Chun Zhao took a deep breath and kept staring into the distance. It's here. 9 black dots appeared in the distant sky. Because they were too far away, he could only see 9 dots. Chun Zhao still didn't move. He continued to observe. If he could sense them, they could definitely sense him too. Chun Zhao didn't have an advantage in terms of perception. Plus, there were 12 giant dragons, and he was just one person. Therefore, Chun Zhao didn't plan on a sudden attack. It was meaningless. Chun Zhao had his own plans. Chapter 26-29. It was a pistol that could shoot 100 meters away. Shooting from 100 meters away and shooting from 10 meters away were two different concepts. A well-trained soldier would have a short time to react if he was targeted from 100 meters away. But if he was targeted from 10 meters away, he could dodge. Right now, Chun Zhao was a bullet. A loaded bullet was about to be fired. Chun Zhao watched as the 12 dragons approached. He tore open the air. The terrifying airflow almost made Lin Beyonce lose her balance. In the blink of an eye, Chun Zhao had disappeared. The moment the 12 dragons approached, Chun Zhao had already locked onto a target. It was a golden dragon. Chun Zhao's strategy was simple. He just had to go all out. Using his advantage in speed, Chun Zhao crashed into the golden dragon. The golden dragon drew a beautiful arc in the air and fell with Chun Zhao. The other 11 dragons wanted to come and help, but 11 of the 12 black balls around Chun Zhao shot at them. Only a small black ball was still circling around Chun Zhao. Before the golden dragon could react, Chun Zhao pried open the dragon's mouth and stuffed the black ball inside. Destroying any enemy from the inside had always been the most effective way to defeat them. Even dragons were no exception. The golden dragon's surface was covered in a gold-like substance. They had a defense that was far superior to other creatures, and even far superior to other dragons. But their internal structure wasn't much stronger than other dragons. Boom! Large amounts of dragon blood spurted out of the golden dragon's mouth, nose, and ears. Then, The golden dragon lowered its head and rolled on the ground a few times. It flapped its wings a few times and then stopped moving. Lin, Beyonce, and Sabonis were dumbfounded. Chun Zhao killed one just like that? It was especially so for Sabonis. He knew that even the smallest of the 12 WIRMS was 10 times bigger than him. He knew how terrifying their strength was. How much stronger were those dragons than you? Maybe a dozen like me can't beat any of them, Sabonis answered after a moment of hesitation. Then how did he kill one in such a short time? Holding the dragon head, Chun Zhao stuffed it into his spatial ring. Although there were as many dragons as one wanted, there were not many dragons at the level of the Dragon Father. In the real world, Chun Zhao killing a Dragon Father would cause a huge uproar. There was even a strong backlash from the dragon race. But here, no one knew. Moreover, it was not something that could be done just by drinking a mouthful of water to kill a Dragon Father-level dragon. Since one of their companions was killed, the other Dragon Fathers and giant dragons were naturally unhappy. They were not below the 9th floor of the training tower. They were created by the rules of the training tower. The 9th floor and the checkpoints above the 9th floor were all filled with real life. Therefore, if they didn't kill one, they would really die. Chun Zhao kicked off the ground and shot out. However, none of the remaining 11 dragons that were at the level of Dragon Father were easy to deal with. Even Chun Zhao would not be able to win easily against a dragon of the same level as the Dragon Father. Phantom, right at this moment, a relatively smaller giant dragon uttered a cry in the dragon language. Its body flashed, and 5 identical giant dragons appeared. I see you. Chun Zhao targeted the first one and pounced at it. But in the end, his punch missed and hit the air. On the other hand, Chun Zhao's Phantom, who was free, slapped him with a dragon claw. Chun Zhao flipped a dozen times in the air. Just then, the second wave of attacks came. A fire dragon shot a super sun at Chun Zhao from behind. Before the super sun, Chun Zhao was as small as an ant. The super sun swallowed Chun Zhao in an instant. Chun Zhao also felt the horrifying heat. But at the same time, Chun Zhao felt his blood boil like never before. At the moment, Lindsay Beyonce watched the battle in the sky in astonishment. Is this a war between dragons? No, that's not a war between dragons, Sabonis said helplessly. Regular dragons can't fight like that. For example, I don't even have the right to get close. The super sun in the distance suddenly exploded. Chun Zhao stood unscathed in the center of the explosion. No, not unscathed, because right now, Chun Zhao's body was also burning with flames. The battle between the 11 dragons and Chun Zhao was intense. It wasn't an earth-shattering battle, but it was close. Your boss looks like he's at a disadvantage. Lindsay Beyonce was actually a bit worried, but she didn't say it. Instead, she glanced at Sabonis, who had been protecting her with his wings. Sabonis actually didn't care about Lindsay's life or death. But since his boss said so, he had to obey. Sabonis shook his head. Didn't you notice? My master looks like he's being attacked, but he's not injured. Lindsay Beyonce was stunned. How is that possible? It was such a fierce battle and such crazy attacks. How could he not be injured? Yes, he's not injured, which means that the 11 Dragon Fathers can't hurt my master, and my master can kill any one of them at any time. Therefore, the direction of this battle will be that the 11 Dragon Fathers will be killed by my master one by one. It was as if Sabonis had made a premonition of death. Just like he'd said, the battle was going on in this manner. Chun Zhao was indeed uninjured. Then, he killed the dragons one by one. It wasn't as easy as the first golden dragon, but it wasn't so difficult that Chun Zhao couldn't do it. Chun Zhao still walked his own path. When you don't hurt me, I have many choices how to hit you. These Dragon Fathers had lived for at least 1,000 years, but they'd never met such a difficult opponent. But there was one thing that they were stronger than Sabonis. That was their tenacity and courage. At least, when there were only 3 dragons left, they didn't cower. They still fought Chun Zhao bravely until the last moment. Chun Zhao could tell that they hadn't lost their minds. They were just looking at death calmly. That was all. Chun Zhao stretched and looked up at the sky. He was considering if he should go to the 11th level in one go. He just fought against the 12 dragons at the same level. Chen Zhao hadn't used his full strength. He'd only used the second level of the primordial regression technique and kept the third level. How big was the difference between the 9th and 10th level? It wasn't a difference that could be described by multiples. There were 3 regular dragons on the 9th level, but there were 12 dragons at the same level as the Dragon Fathers on the 10th level. It was 4 times more than that. Chapter 2630. The 10th floor was more than 100 times harder than the 9th floor. If the difficulty increased according to this, then the difficulty of the 11th level would be 100 times that of the 10th level. And how much could the 3rd level of Chen Zhao's primordial regression technique increase his battle power? At most, it wouldn't exceed 30 times. Ever since Chen Zhao used the Divine Power Potion, Chen Zhao's combat ability, from basic to advanced techniques, had all improved. Even without activating the 2nd level of the primordial regression technique, his battle prowess was already equivalent to that of the past. And after activating the 2nd level of the primordial regression technique, his battle prowess was close to the 3rd level of the primordial regression technique. The 3rd level was several times stronger than before. Chen Zhao's level didn't increase, but Chen Zhao's combat power increased very quickly. At the very least, Chen Zhao was confident that if he encountered another gathering of demon lords like last time, he wouldn't have to flee so pathetically. He couldn't guarantee that he would be able to kill a few of the enemy greater demon overlords, but he could at least guarantee that the enemy wouldn't be able to obtain any benefits. If the opponent was just a demon lord, Chen Zhao had a 90% chance of killing him. However, he didn't have the confidence to face more than one greater demon lord. This was because every greater demon overlord had their own trump cards and life-saving trump cards. So, Chen Zhao had to fight against 2 or more demon lords. Basically, all he could do was protect himself. If he was lucky, it wouldn't be a problem to kill 1 or 2 of them. Chen Zhao was confident in normal methods. However, every greater demon lord had a nuclear switch in their hands. Chen Zhao was not afraid of a demon lord's nuclear weapon. But even Chen Zhao wouldn't feel good if he was hit by one. After all, when the greater demon overlord had been building a party, the demon overlord had not been able to do so. After being shot by Chen Zhao's nuclear weapon, most of the demon lords were sent to meet Lucifer. So, in terms of regular combat power, Chen Zhao could chase after a large group of demon lords and stab them in the ass. But if 2 great demon lords came and threw the nuclear switch in front of him, he would also be terrified. It was precisely because Chen Zhao had his own nuclear weapons that he knew how scary they were. If he faced 10 great demon lords on the Trial Tower's 11th floor, he wouldn't be able to survive. Chen Zhao was probably going to die. Thus, after much consideration, he decided to give up on the 11th floor for now. According to the increase in difficulty, the 11th level would probably be 100 times more difficult than the 10th level. If there was another Lord's gathering, Chen Zhao would break down and want to kill himself. Thus, in order to clear the Trial Tower's 11th floor, the first thing to do was not to increase one's combat power. It was resistance. Chen Zhao was even considering if he should use some channels to create something that could cause a world war. Then, he could find a quiet place to play. To be honest, this idea was scary, but it also made Chen Zhao's heart race. Chen Zhao finished off the 12 Dragon Fathers, leaving nothing behind. Then he landed before Lindsay Beyonce and Sabonis. Now, Lin Beyonce could no longer face Chen Zhao as arrogantly as before. She would never think of such a stupid idea again. Seized by West. West's old bones couldn't even withstand one of Chen Zhao's fingers. Sometimes, the so-called seizing of power was based on the fact that the 2 sides were equal in strength. However, when the strength of the 2 sides in the game was not on the same level, it could only be regarded as authorization. You can have what I give you. You can't take it if I don't give it to you. However, when a giant dragon appeared in the headquarters of the supernatural organization, many people were shocked. Everyone stared at Sabonis as if they were facing a great enemy. But when they saw Chen Zhao, they all heaved a sigh of relief. All of them together couldn't handle an adult dragon, But Chen Zhao was different. Even if 100 dragons came, Chen Zhao could take them all. When they realized that the dragon was Chen Zhao's pet, they were even less surprised. Anyway, they all knew that Chen Zhao's family already had a young dragon. It seemed to be called a Betos. It was still very young. At least to an adult dragon, a Betos was about the size of a lizard. But to a normal person, it was basically a monster. Sabonis, can you turn into a human? Human? Why are you in human form? Chen Zhao and Sabonis had a spiritual resonance. As long as their spiritual powers were connected, they could communicate directly. Just do it when I tell you to. Stop talking. Chen Zhao did not have a good attitude towards Sabonis. Most people would find it hard to cherish someone who threw themselves at them. For example, Chen Zhao would grant Abitos everything at home. He practically raised Abitos like a son. As for Sabonis, Chen Zhao basically raised him like a dog. Master, I can't change. I don't know how. President, the dragon transformation magic came from humans, West said. They can't turn into humans naturally. Is that so? I thought that when dragons become adults and are strong enough, they can turn into humans directly. Everyone rolled their eyes. Did Chen Zhao think that dragons could turn into humans naturally just because they had nothing better to do? But that's troublesome. The airport construction site is not far away. It's too obvious for such a big guy to run around. How big was Sabonis? Lying on the ground, he was about 3 stories tall at his highest point. From head to tail, he was at least 155 meters tall. With such a huge body, if outsiders approached, they would not be able to hide. Chen Zhao rubbed his chin. If outsiders saw Sabonis, it would definitely be big trouble. It would be great if he could cut him into pieces and store him. Master, I can turn into a small mountain, Sabonis said immediately. Chen Zhao forgot that he was still in a spiritual connection with Sabonis. Sabonis would be able to sense what he was thinking at the first moment. To avoid being cut into pieces and kept by Chen Zhao, Sabonis definitely had to speak first. Wasn't it just hiding? How hard could it be? You could choose whatever shape you wanted. There would definitely be one that suited your taste. Sabonis knew how cruel his master was. He had torn the 12 dragon fathers into pieces. He did not think that he could fight Chen Zhao head-on. Even without the restriction of the contract, he did not dare to be a traitor. However, Chen Zhao did not realize that Sabonis could really turn into a small mountain. More accurately, he could turn his body into stone. Curled up, Sabonis was really like a small mountain. Chapter 26:31. It's Chinese New Year tomorrow, Chen Zhao said. Ruan, you'll be in charge of making some magic tools as gifts for our members, Chen said. President, Chinese New Year is a holiday for you Chinese. Is there a problem? Chen Zhao turned to look at Ruan. Okay, no. Ruan immediately admitted defeat. But, guild leader, what quality do you think I should give? What quality can you make? And it can be mass-produced. President, any magic tool that can be made can be mass-produced, even divine artifacts. But those that aren't anything good. Why? Since technology isn't the problem, materials become the biggest problem, Ruan said. Even if the supernatural organization has a lot of dragon materials, it's not practical to mass-produce magic tools. It's even more troublesome to make magic tools that are mainly made of other materials. Ruan Faxben said, I killed a few more dragons earlier. Is it enough to make a magic tool with dragon bodies as the main material? How many? 15. 12 of them are high level. They're at the level of Dragon Father. Ruan Faxben gasped. He knew Chen was terrifying, but killing 12 dragons at the level of the Dragon Father still shocked him. President, the materials from Dragon Father dragons are indeed high level. They can even be used to make divine artifacts, but we don't have enough time to make such high-level magic tools. Didn't you say that we can mass produce them as long as we have enough materials? Yes, but we still need time. How much time? I can only make 2 per day. So little. President, that's if we have a clear idea. We can only make 2 a day after the first magic tool is made. Ruan said helplessly. Ruan Faxi said helplessly. For a non-standard magic tool, you must first have a clear direction, then try, and then stop, Stop, stop. Tell me, how much time do you need? President, tell me first. What kind of magic tool do you want to make? Of course, it's to increase our people's combat power and self-defense. Chen Zhao's request was simple. Power. It could be used by the supernatural organization to strengthen and equip themselves. It's very simple, and it's not difficult to design. But still, time. How long? The design will take at least half a month. Chen shook his head. That's too long. Guild leader, it's impossible to be any faster. What if I have a ready-made blueprint? It also depends on the difficulty, Ruan said. Forget it. I don't need your help. I'll find another alchemist myself. Chen waved his hand. Ruan smiled bitterly. President, unless you can find the world's best alchemist. Chen was not familiar with Wendy, the top alchemist in the human world. But Chen could find it in hell. He wouldn't dare to say that he was the #1 alchemist, but he could at least find an alchemist on par with Wendy. Phoenix Nightag's alchemy level was no worse than Wynn's. Help me keep an eye on that dragon. If he does anything wrong, inform me immediately. Chen also had to go home to prepare for Chinese New Year's Eve. Varian Marks and Zephyr's team followed behind the rest of the team. Max Manor seemed to be defenseless. Over 1,000 spiritualists charged into Max's manor. Then they went straight in and took care of a few small problems. After finding a secret passage, they entered it one after another. However, the passage was like a maze, full of twists and turns. Varian Marks and Zephyr's team also took a different path. Fankel, there's such a huge space under your house. I didn't know there was such a huge maze under the manor. Jane Fankel followed behind the team in silence. As a matter of fact, it wasn't that Jane Fankel didn't know about the maze. When she was very young, she had entered it by mistake. Fortunately, her father found her at the entrance of the labyrinth. Later on, Jane Fankel found a map hidden in her father's study. The maze was not just a flat surface. It was a three-dimensional maze with many layers from top to bottom. With her super memory, she remembered every corner and dead end in the maze. Of course, she also knew the correct route. Zephyr glanced at Jane Fankel behind her. Are you a member of this family too? Is there a problem? Jane Fankel raised her head and looked at Zephyr. Although Zephyr looked younger than her daughter, she suspected that Zephyr was the same as Varian Marks. However, she suspected that Zephyr was the same as Varian Max, an old monster who looked young but was actually hundreds of years old. No, there's no problem. Zephyr shook her head. Haber Timur Haber has many descendants in this world. According to the information I received, there were 3 families in history that were no smaller than the Marx family. These families were seeds that Haber Timur Haber deliberately left in the human world. However, they were eventually destroyed, not by other human forces, but by Haber Timur Haber himself. Jane Fankel's brows furrowed slightly, but she did not speak. She continued to maintain her silence. Zephyr continued. Haber Timur Haber knows how to take advantage of the weaknesses of humans. Wealth, honor, women, and extraordinary strength. Even if his descendants had great wealth and power, they could not escape the temptation of Haber Timur Haber. Haber Timur Haber also used his greedy descendants to achieve his evil goals. After he was done with them, they would be cleaned up like garbage. Zephyr glanced at Varian Marks and continued. Do you want to know how Haber Timur Haber got rid of his descendants? Jane Fankel raised her head. She could feel that Zephyr said all this on purpose. However, she could not help but be curious. She wanted to ask Zephyr for an answer. Devour, Zephyr said. Zephyr said, he gives his power to his children, and then this power is like a seed that takes root and germinates in his children's bodies. In a very short period of time, these children will become very powerful, even close to the level of an adult dragon. However, there is a price for their growth in such a short period of time, and that is their lives. They are so immersed in their own power that they are unable to extricate themselves and do not even realize it. Then, their final death will be personally bestowed by Haber Timur Haber. Chapter 2632. Jane Fankel's face was extremely pale. Are you saying that my father and brother will be devoured by Timur Haber in the end? There is no doubt that all the past cases have proven this point. You are blood relatives, so your power is very compatible with his. However, at the same time, humans do not have the vitality and physique of dragons. At least, most humans do not. So, the power that you grew did not appear out of thin air. It was Timur Haber's seed that absorbed your vitality. Jane Fankel trembled in fear. She couldn't help but look at Varian Marks. Is that true? This kind of behavior is unique even among the dragons, Varian said calmly. Even the dragons would not harm their own blood relatives. Timur Haber is definitely an anomaly among the dragons. In the past hundreds of years, he has used his descendants to build a family to achieve his goals. At the same time, he has devoured his descendants one by one. Through this method, he has become unbelievably powerful. How powerful is he? Indescribable. Then, these people, under normal circumstances, they would suffer heavy losses and inflict serious damage to Timur Haber. But now, it is hard for us to have any hope. Why? Timur Haber has never fallen into a trap before. He would never fall into one unless he set it up himself. Hot VLA looked at Jane Fankel. Do you understand what I mean? You're saying that Timur Haber has deliberately lured them here. Although we still don't know what Timur Haber's goal is, I'm sure that he spread the news on purpose to lure these spiritualists here, Varian Marks said confidently. Maybe they're all Timur Haber's dinner. I know the correct way to this maze, Jane Fankel said. Everyone's gaze landed on Jane Fankel. However, I want you to rescue my father and brother. Those who are controlled by Timur Haber will never be able to escape his control. No, you must have a way. But Zephyr still shook her head firmly. There's no other way. Looks like you don't want to go through the maze. We don't have to go through this maze. I once snuck in here alone, and I reached the deepest part of the maze. I know what's inside. Jevra and Varian Max looked at each other. What's in the deepest part? A white pearl, held in the palm of a stone statue. I was 14 years old at the time. I spent 6 hours trying to remember the route as I walked through the maze. I reached the deepest part of the maze and finally saw the white bead at the end. However, when I got close to the bead, I could barely stand. It was as if I was forced to kneel on the ground by an invisible force. Dragon Ball? Zephyra and Varian looked at each other again. What Jane Fankel described was very similar to what they knew about the Dragon Ball. But very few Dragon Balls have draconic aura, Zephyr said. It should be a high-level Dragon Ball. Timur Haber's goal is probably that Dragon Ball. That doesn't make sense. If he wanted the Dragon Ball, he could have gotten it himself. Maybe the Dragon Ball was already in his possession. Why did he have to play so many tricks? Or, the Dragon Ball isn't something he can take freely. Something is protecting him, and if he wants to get the Dragon Ball, he has to defeat the Guardian. If we follow this train of thought, his goal in attracting those spiritualists here is to let them replace him and defeat that Guardian. Then, he can reap the benefits without doing anything. That's possible. But why wasn't she attacked? Since she was already close to the Dragon Ball, she should have been attacked by the Guardian. With her ability, it's almost impossible for her to escape from the Guardian. There's no chance at all. Because she wasn't a threat, Zephyr said. She was probably intimidated by the draconic aura of the Dragon Ball, so she was not considered a threat. According to this logic, the Guardian of the Dragon Ball isn't a living creature. It's more like some kind of program, such as a gargoyle or a puppet. They will judge by themselves whether a creature close to the Dragon Ball is a threat. There's nothing in the deepest part of the labyrinth, Jane Fankel said. There was only a stone statue holding a Dragon Ball in the open field, and that stone statue was almost rotten, and it was only the size of an ordinary person. It was impossible for it to be a puppet or a gargoyle, like you said Jane Fankel. As an ordinary person, you can't understand magic puppets or gargoyles. They might be around you, but you don't know about them, or they need some kind of ritual or appear when necessary. Don't judge the world of magic with ordinary people's knowledge. Great Dragon Slayer, you can't even find the right way out of this labyrinth. Why do you have to be proud in front of me? At least you have something to ask of us now, Zephyr said disdainfully, glancing at Jane Fankel. She didn't want to bicker with Jane Fankel. It was meaningless. But what I want, you can't do it either, can you? You don't need to provoke us. Your father and brother are doomed to die. Only by stopping Haber Timur Haber's plan can they live a little longer. Once Haber Timur Haber achieves his goal, your father and brother will die even faster. For us, not stopping Haber Timur Haber is already the norm. We don't lose anything, and we're already used to it. But for you, it's not the same. Jane Fankel's face stiffened. Finally, she sighed. I'll take you to the deepest part, Zephyr said. Actually, there's a way. What way? Since Haber Timur Haber can devour them, of course, they can also devour Haber Timur Haber. Chapter 26:33. Although it was only the 29th, Chen had already started greeting them one by one. Happy New Year, handsome. Happy New Year. I know it's your biggest holiday. I'll bring you a New Year's present next time I go to hell. Oh, do I need to prepare some red envelopes for you? That's for juniors. We're not juniors. Fine. What do I need to prepare for you? Treat me to a meal. However, the handsome guy had other ideas. After thinking for a long while, he said, I know what you need. What do I need? I don't even know myself. Do you? I remember you adopted a dragon, right? Yes. Is the person with the summoning magic array from last time there? Yes, I am. Tell him to summon it. I'll have a demon bring it over. Okay. After hanging up, Chun called Toddy Belster. Toddy, do you have time? Come out. I'll wait for you at the coast. Chun was curious what kind of gift the handsome guy would give him. Toddy Belster appeared on a two-headed dragon. The two-headed dragon, which was close to 10 meters long, looked very cool indeed. It also had some dragon blood, which made it look cool and have a hint of dragon might. Although the almost negligible dragon might had no effect on humans, it was very threatening to other creatures. Of course, Toddy Belster mainly wanted to avoid people. Being noticed, so she chose this mode of transportation. He didn't think he had the right to show off in front of Chun. President, Toddy Belster greeted respectfully. President, what kind of demon do you want me to summon? I don't know. Just summon one. Toddy was speechless. He didn't know what Chun wanted or what kind of demon he needed. So, after thinking for a while, Toddy summoned a big demon. He didn't know what Chun wanted or what kind of demon he needed. This demon was at the peak of intermediate demons. However, he still knelt on one knee before Chun. Greetings, sir. What did that person ask you to bring me? That lord asked me to bring you this. The demon took out an exquisite box and handed it to Jen. Okay, this is for you. Chun tossed a high-quality demonic crystal to the demon. The great demon's face lit up, and he bowed again. Thank you for your kindness. This lowly one will take his leave. Jen opened the box. Inside was a flawless white pearl. Jen was a little surprised. The quality of this pearl seemed to be extraordinary. However, what was the use of this thing? He had heard from the handsome guy that this thing was used by abitos. However, the moment he opened the box, at the same time, it exuded a terrifying dragon's might. Great Demon and Toddy Belster both looked terrified. The oppressive feeling emitted by the dragon might made them almost unable to stand still. Jin glanced at Toddy Belster and the demon. He immediately closed the box, and the firebird suddenly disappeared. Toddy Belster and the archdevil were relieved. The dragon might, just now, almost made him collapse. Toady, take him back. Toddy Belster let out a long sigh and recalled the great demon. President, that's a friend sent it to me from hell. Toddy Belster gulped. A friend from hell? Jen had too many friends. Okay, that's all. Just as Toddy was about to leave, Jen suddenly stopped him. Oh, Happy New Year, Jen said. Toddy Belster was a pure American. He stared at Chun, dumbfounded. New Year? Both Christmas and New Year's had passed almost 2 months ago. Happy New Year at this time? Toddy Belster left with a face full of questions. Jen called the handsome guy again. Did you get it? Yes. It's a Dragon Ball, right? It should be of a high level. It's a Dragon King level Dragon Ball, the handsome guy said. But it's different from the ones in the human world. What's different? The dragon race also has a bottleneck. When the dragon race in hell faces the end of their lives, they will leave their strength and knowledge in the Dragon Ball for their descendants. When their descendants encounter a bottleneck, they will be able to quickly break through the bottleneck. This is the inheritance of the dragon. However, in the human world, the inheritance of the dragon race has long been severed. Therefore, when the dragon race encounters their own bottleneck, they will be forever locked in this realm. Most of the time, they can only rely on their race's innate talent to grow and will not be able to break through. In other words, this Dragon Ball is for Abitos to use when he reaches his limit? Really? More accurately, it's for the little guy to be half a Dragon King before giving him the Legacy Dragon Ball. That's too far away, Jin said. Plus, his parents should be prepared. Abitos' adulthood would take at least a few hundred years. Jin might not even see Abitos become an adult. It would take thousands of years or even longer for him to reach the level of a Dragon King. His parents can't prepare for it, unless his mother mutilates herself and leaves him the Legacy Dragon Ball. Is Iris a Dragon King now? Isn't she a great lord? A great lord is a Dragon King. The handsome guy rolled his eyes. You don't think a Dragon King is the same as a secondary Demon King, do you? Isn't it? Dragons and demons have different levels. Fine, looks like I got it wrong. But if Iris can grow to the level of a Dragon King, Abitos can too. His bloodline isn't any weaker than his mother's. From the moment he was born, his appearance determined that he's a dragon. The dragon bloodline won. Even if he has the bloodline of a glutton, it'll only be useful in battle. He can only grow like a dragon. The bloodline of a glutton won't give him any advantage. How do I use this Dragon Ball? Hang a pendant on him. Put a layer of thorium on the surface of the Dragon Ball to block the dragon might. Then peel it off bit by bit so he can adapt to the dragon might. When the time is right, eat the Dragon Ball. Chapter 2634. Is it only effective for the first time? Yes, but if you can get more Legacy Dragon Balls for him, the effect will be better. More accurately, the upper limit will be higher. This is the only chance to increase the upper limit of the dragon race. In other words, there's no upper limit for the first use. No, the more the better, the more the better. There won't be any conflicts. Nope. Can you buy Legacy Dragon Balls with wealth in hell? As long as you're rich enough, there's nothing you can't buy in hell. Of course you have enough wealth. That's expensive, right? It can create a great lord. Do you think it's expensive? Fine, pretend I didn't say anything. Chin thought about it and said, there should be in the human world too, right? I remember there's a Dragon King in the human world. Even if there's a Dragon King, it doesn't mean there's an inheritance. As far as I know, the dragon inheritance in the human world has been cut off long ago. When the ancestral dragon exiled the Haiba dragons, he cut off their inheritance from a root. He must have exiled many Haiba dragons back then, right? Can he check them one by one? He directly cut off the roots. All the members of the Haiba dragon tribe who were qualified to inherit the inheritance were all killed by him. Those who were exiled were almost all young dragons, and a curse was placed in their bloodlines. No member of the Haiba dragon tribe was allowed to inherit the inheritance. Unless a more powerful being than the ancestral dragon appeared in the Haiba dragon tribe one day, the curse would follow the descendants of the Haiba dragon tribe forever. Chen had some hope at first. Perhaps he could find it in the human world and gain something. But the handsome guy's words made Chun completely give up. There were Legacy Dragon Balls in hell. However, the value of each inheritance Dragon Ball was 10 times greater than the wealth of a greater demon overlord. Imagine a demon lord at the level of Beelzebub Zophi. The wealth accumulated over thousands of years was only enough to buy a tenth of one Legacy Dragon Ball. After hanging up, Chun went straight to Ruan Fazabin's house. Ruan Faxbin had recently bought a house outside. He didn't have to report to the supernatural organization every day, so most of the time, he didn't go out at all. However, his house was also very remote, mainly because he usually had to do some experiments. If he chose to do it in the downtown area, it would be more inconvenient. In fact, many members of the supernatural organization chose to buy houses outside. Ruan Faxi was not the first. This was Chen's first visit to Ruan Faisai's main family. His family wasn't small. Chen walked to the door and pressed the doorbell. Although he could go in directly, Chen didn't want to be rude. Who? Ruan Faxbin's tone was rather impolite. Me. Kachao a tenth of a second later. The door opened. Although Ruan Faxi's house wasn't small, it was rather messy. Many things were thrown all over the place, and no one had tidied them up. Guild leader, why are you here? Ruan Faxi thought it was because of what Chun had said during the day. Do you have thorium here? Thorium? I don't have any. President, what do you need thorium for? I need to wrap something in thorium. President, thorium is a very rare magical metal. It's almost as valuable as gold, but there aren't many uses for it, so I don't have any reserves. Do you know where I can find it? President, if you're not in a hurry, I can mine and smelt some, but it'll take a few months. Mine and smelt? You change your profession? It's hard to buy thorium on the market, so alchemists like us usually choose to mine it ourselves if we need it. Do you know where there's a thorium mine? No. Then how are you going to find it? President, I've raised gold-eating hyenas for a few days. They like to eat magical metals and can find ores dozens of kilometers away. Alchemists basically have a few. Gold-eating hyenas? What kind? Bring me there. When Chen Yuanbin heard the name, he thought it would be some ferocious magical beast. In the end, Ruan Faxi brought Chen to a fence that was more than 10 square meters wide. Chen looked at the dozen square meters of enclosure and saw a few round meatballs. His face was full of shock. Are those the metal-eating boars? Yes, President. Is there a problem? Chen looked at the meatballs. They weren't big or ferocious. They were about the size of a Pekingese and no more than 30 centimeters tall. Their bodies were oval and they had 4 short legs. They could barely stand on the ground. If the ground was slightly uneven, they would probably roll on their bellies. Looking at the gold-eating hyenas, they seemed to have 4 legs on their heads and 2 small tails hanging from their butts. How do I order these gold-eating hyenas? Hold them in your arms. Basically, wherever they go, there'll be magical metal ores. In other words, they might not find thorium ores. Gold-eating hyenas are usually fed regular metals. If you need them to find magical metal ores, just feed them that. They'll remember the taste of the magical metal and only look for it. However, they'll only look for the tastiest magical metal in their memory. For example, if they think that mithril tastes better than thorium, they'll only look for mithril and not thorium. Thus, you can only feed them regular metals and only feed them magical metals when they're needed. After a few times, they basically lose their appetite and become useless. They can only be used for breeding and can no longer search for magical metals. So, if I want them to find thorium, I have to feed them thorium first? Yes, but I don't have it. You don't either. Ruan Faxben grinned. There are a few magic items in my collection that contain thorium. I'll dismantle them. Chun snickered. He wasn't mocking him. Judging from Ruan Faxi's pained expression, he must have suffered a great loss. Don't be so pained. I'll get you some good stuff later as compensation. Ruan Faxi instantly beamed. Chen even suspected that he was trying to trick him with that expression. Chen picked up a gold-eating hyena. It didn't struggle at all. Instead, it gurgled and burrowed into Chen's arms. There was some dust on the gold-eating hyena, but it wasn't dirty. It was also very fleshy. It had the potential to be a cute pet. Chen wondered if she should get some for the kids to play with at home. Do these little pigs poop everywhere? Chapter 2635. President, metal-eating hyenas love cleanliness. They're also smart. As long as you give them a spot, they'll go there and won't excrete randomly. Can they be pets? Yes, but no one will keep them as pets. Why? They like magical metals the most, but they also eat regular metals. If they're not full of magical metals, they'll eat regular metals. Think about who doesn't have a lot of metal in their house. Chun Zhao thought about it. This was a problem. Forget it. I'll think about it later. Chun Zhao decided to settle this before tomorrow. He would give it to Abitos during the new year. President, you can carry it and find a random place. Then, after a certain distance, if it doesn't respond, you can change direction. But it's best if it's further away. California was once mined by the spiritual world, so it's almost impossible to find any rare magical metal mines in California. Okay, got it. Soon, Ruan Faxi returned with the thorium he'd removed from the magic tool. It was only the size of a fingernail. When the fat boy in Chen Zhao's arms saw this small piece of thorium, he immediately struggled to rush to it. Chen Zhao took the thorium. The boy gurgled, as if he couldn't wait anymore. Chen Zhao didn't tease him. He put the thorium into the boy's mouth. The little fat boy ate happily. Unfortunately, there was too little thorium. It wasn't even enough for a few mouthfuls. Is this okay? Yes. That small piece of thorium isn't enough for him. He'll want more thorium now. Okay, I'm leaving. With that, Chen Zhao carried the boy and flew into the air. Mac's family's underground maze. Under Jin Fankel's lead, the group had reached the third level of the maze. However, their journey here wasn't smooth. They weren't the only team here. Some teams even launched attacks on them. Fortunately, everyone here was feeling the way blindly, so most of the teams were separated. Therefore, there weren't many people who attacked them. However, the maze was large and complicated. They couldn't stop so many people. Moreover, there were spiritualists among them who could guide them. Therefore, their speed of advancement might not necessarily be slower than theirs. There were still many corpses along the way. It didn't seem like they had killed each other. It looked more like a corpse that had been eaten by some wild beast. However, with so many spiritualists, it wasn't strange for a few of them to raise exotic beasts or summon demonic creatures. At this moment, a team of about 8 or 9 people appeared in front of them. They had about the same number of people on their side. The leader was a bespectacled man with long hair. The man was followed by 2 ferocious dogs. The long-haired man had a faint smile on his face as he looked at the Dragon Slayer team opposite him. Varian furrowed her brows. She did not like the long-haired man in front of her. He didn't know why, but he felt a sense of disgust. Suddenly, Varian's pupils constricted. He glared at the long-haired man. The dragon race. That man was also a dragon. Varian Marks immediately drew her weapon. Her weapons were a pair of silver spears, engraved with many cryptic runes. Although Zevra and Varian Max didn't get along. But at this moment, her choice was the same. Varian's enemy was her enemy. Don't be impulsive. A conflict here won't do you any good, the long-haired man said with a smile. However, his words didn't make the Dragon Slayer team lower their guard and weapons. At this moment, a tall man beside the long-haired man said, "Master, let me teach these little guys a lesson." The man was dressed like an ancient gladiator. He wore chainmail, but his arms were bare. He carried a large sword on his back. Varian's pupils contracted when she saw the dragon tattoo on the man's arm. "Traitor!" Varian snorted in a low voice. The tall man grinned. "Little guy, if you want to get to the root of the matter, you're the traitors." Randolph stepped down. The long-haired man waved his hand. The tall man, called Randolph, retreated respectfully. "Dragon Slayer, I'm not your target. I'm not an evil dragon either. Our goal should be the same. Every dragon is a good thing," Varian said coldly. "All right, every dragon slayer is indeed an extreme lunatic." The long-haired man sighed. "Even if I'm an evil dragon, you shouldn't have a conflict with me here. You have no chance of winning." Dragon slayers didn't rely on their bravery to slay dragons. In a direct battle, no dragon slayer could defeat a dragon. Dragons were dragons because they were so powerful that no one could defeat them. Even though it was a dragon in human form, most spiritualists still stopped in their tracks. No, this underground labyrinth uses a large amount of thorium. Thorium can greatly suppress dragons. You might not even be able to use half of your strength here, and you can't even revert to your dragon form here. So, we have a chance of winning, Varian Max said coldly. The long-haired man laughed. "Yes, indeed. I can't even use half of my strength here. But if you want to defeat me, you must first understand my upper limit. Even if I can only use 1/10 of my strength, I'm still..." Whoosh! Instantly, the long-haired man's eyes lit up. Along with his sharp gaze was a terrifying dragon aura. The Dragon Slayer team instantly felt a terrifying pressure. Varian clenched her teeth, but her legs couldn't help but tremble. Some of the weak-willed members of the Dragon Slayer team behind her had even collapsed to the ground. For example, Jane Fankel. She didn't have any experience fighting against Dragon Aura. She was already curled up on the ground, shivering. "You can't even defeat my 2 dogs now," the long-haired man said with a smile. "You should be glad that I didn't plan to kill you." The long-haired man retracted his Dragon Aura. But at that moment, Varian fired. A magic bullet was shot at the long-haired man. Whoosh! The long-haired man caught the bullet with 2 fingers. The long-haired man was still smiling. "I could forgive you the first time." Chapter 2636. You're not weakened by thorium? Valerie looked at the long-haired man in disbelief. It wasn't hard to catch bullets with bare hands. The hard part was catching her magic bullets. They were magic bullets specially designed to deal with dragons. It was a magic bullet that could pierce through the scales of an adult dragon and cause great damage to them. But now, the guy in front of her caught them with 2 fingers. He weakened? I never said I was weakened, the long-haired man said with a smile. Thorium does have a certain weakening effect on ordinary dragons, but for a dragon at the level of Dragon Father, it's just a little uncomfortable. That's all. Dragon Father? Everyone in the Dragon Slayer team's expression changed. Even Jane Fankel had been in contact with Valerie for the past few days. She more or less knew what Dragon Father represented. It was the top existence among the dragons. All right, if I wanted to kill you, you would be dead already, the long-haired man said indifferently. The Dragon Slayers were quite unhappy with this statement, but they couldn't refute it. The long-haired man was too powerful, so powerful that it made them feel hopeless. "Let's go," Valerie snorted in a low voice. She was unhappy with the long-haired man in front of her, but she also knew that continuing to fight wouldn't help. She couldn't kill the long-haired man. Instead, she would anger him. The Dragon Slayers walked in front of the team. Suddenly, she realized that the long-haired man and his men were following them. Valerie had been restraining herself at first, but when she realized that there was a team following them, she couldn't hold it in anymore. She stopped with a dark expression and turned to look at the long-haired man. "What do you want?" The long-haired man walked up with a smile. "It's on the way. Do you mind going together?" "Yes, I don't mind." "Humph." Valerie turned and walked away. However, she and her team couldn't shake off the long-haired man behind them. This made her more and more irritable, almost to the point of going berserk. She turned back again and looked at the man following her. She walked in front of the long-haired man. The long-haired man smiled and waved his hand. "Valerie, don't be so irritable. I didn't do anything. You just haven't done anything yet. I didn't do anything before, did I? You knew me before?" Varian Marks frowned at the man in front of her. She tried to remember where she had seen this man before. However, other than disgust, she couldn't find any memory of this man. "The famous crocodile. How could I not know?" The long-haired man said with a smile. Crocodile, Varian's nickname. For a woman to receive such a nickname, it was definitely not a good name. She had killed a few dragons in the past. She was like a crocodile, patiently waiting for the arrival of her prey, patiently waiting for the prey to step into her carefully prepared trap. Once her prey took the bait, she would kill it in the most vicious way possible, just like a crocodile. Varian stared at the man in front of her. Could it be that he was one of her targets in the past? However, if he was her target in the past, there was no reason for him not to remember. However, this smile was hard to ignore. He must have seen him somewhere before. That smile was driving her crazy. Varian's thoughts kept moving backward. Vaguely, Varian Marks seemed to have found that damned smile. In the Marks family, right here. Decades ago, when she was still a few years old, she had already forgotten her exact age. This man had appeared here before. He had been a visitor here. Everything came back to him. "It's you. Looks like you remember. Do you still remember my name?" Once again, Varian's thoughts wandered back to decades ago. She tried to recall what this man had done. "Arthur Alberta Haber." "Huh?" Arthur Alberta Haber laughed. "You still remember me. What do you want to do?" "Do what?" Arthur Alberta Haber rubbed his chin and thought for a long time. Stop Haber Haber, my brother. You and Haber Haber are brothers. Is it strange? The corners of Arthur Alberta Haber's mouth curved. Since you were brothers with him, why do you want to stop him? You shouldn't. Shouldn't we be in cahoots? Really? Varian Marks didn't reply, but that was what her eyes meant. You're not the kind of person who upholds justice. Dragon, Varian said. Indeed, I am not, but I care about my status, Arthur Alberta Haber said. Arthur Alberta Haber said, his current behavior has threatened my position, so it's dog biting dog. Varian's voice seemed to be very soft, but in fact, she deliberately said it for Arthur Alberta Haber to hear. You're right, it's dog biting dog. But in this way, you should also believe in my position, my lovely little niece. Dragons can never be trusted, Varian said coldly. Don't forget that half of the blood that flows in your body is also the blood of the giant dragon. So what? I never thought I was a descendant of dragons. Your bloodline will not disappear because you deny it, and you are still using the bloodline of dragons that you hate the most to achieve your own goals. Is there a problem with using the power of dragons to kill dragons? This is what I like to do the most. Then do you desire more power? I do. Then admit your dragon bloodline. No need. Then you will never be able to defeat him. He is more powerful than you think. There will always be someone in this world who can kill him, Zephyrus suddenly interjected. Arthur Alberta Haber shook his head. There are very few dragons who can defeat him, let alone humans. What about you? Aren't you here to stop him? If possible, I really don't want to have anything to do with this lunatic. Arthur Alberta Haber sighed. Are you afraid of him too? It's not that I'm afraid of him, but some of his methods give even me a headache. I've fought with dragons. Even dragons have weaknesses. He can think of the weaknesses that you can think of. He can be called the dragon of deceit, but it's not just for show. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.